Good evening. My name is Chantel Wright. I am Chair of the DC Public Charter School Board. Thank you for joining us for our first of two board meetings this month. This is an additional meeting. Our regular monthly meeting will be held later in the month. I would like to welcome my fellow board members and colleagues, including Vice Chair Jim Salmon, Treasurer Carissa Stanley Beatty, Secretary Shakura Adamafanian, Board Member Dwight Davis, and Leah Cruzy will be voting tonight via proxy. As I said last month, we are all navigating an incredibly complex landscape right now. Washington, D.C.'s budget for the rest of this year is unclear, and the mayor has been forced to delay the release of next year's budget due to the uncertainty with the current fiscal year. I know that uncertainty puts additional pressure on school leaders who already have a full array of responsibilities. And as a former school leader, I know how hard you work to ensure that your scholars have what they need to do their best in your classroom, your teachers have the resources they need to teach their scholars, and your families can continue to trust the school to provide the education and oftentimes life support that families and students need. And each of you must communicate regularly with families and staff, all while you are balancing budgets, moving resources around, and making your schools work well, and always thinking about the next challenge that may be coming. To our school leaders, teachers, and staff, I want to say thank you for all you do each and every day. Our students and families depend on you. Thank you. At our March board meeting, we began our important responsibility under the School Reform Act. We are required to review every public charter school every 5 years. Those reviews look back at the last 5 years and focus on academics, finances, and operations. We will be reviewing a total of 20 schools over the next 4 months. Last month, we discussed 3 schools: Cedar Tree PCS, IDEA PCS, and Hope Community PCS. We celebrated Cedar Tree PCS as an institution that was approved to continue to operate. Congratulations to the Cedar Tree team. The board approved IDEA and Hope Community to continue with rigorous conditions they will need to meet each year. And one of those requirements is that they notify the families of these conditions. Tonight, we have 2 schools under review: Capitol Village PCS and Washington Global PCS. We initially had a 3rd school, iDream PCS, but the school's board of trustees decided to relinquish its charter after learning of the PCSB staff recommendation that tough conditions for continuance be imposed. This relinquishment will be read into record later tonight. Before I turn it over to Dr. Walker Davis, I would like to commend the DC PCSB staff and board for their strong work on financial and academic oversight and their willingness to make the tough decisions to ensure that all students have access to quality education. I will turn it over to Dr. Walker Davis.
Thank you, Chair Wright. I want to begin by expressing my deep appreciation to the board and the dedicated staff of DC PCSB. Your ongoing commitment, both the work that has brought us here tonight and what lies ahead, is essential to ensuring strong outcomes for our schools and students. This year, our work is centered around a clear and focused set of priorities: academics, finance, and organizational management. These pillars are foundational to our accountability and reflect our shared commitment to excellence. Our strategic roadmap, and specifically the Excellent Schools priority, underscores our responsibility to make decisions that are responsive to citywide needs and that improve outcomes for all DC students, especially those who have historically been underserved. A key element of effective charter school authorizing is understanding that the relationship between the authorizer and the school is a partnership. As the National Charter School Institute notes, true success is built on mutual accountability and a shared focus on student success. I want to take a moment to thank our school leaders and their boards of trustees for not only the dedication and leadership they bring to this work every day, but for being a partner to us in this work. I'd like to note that tonight's agenda may look a little different than usual. That's because we're holding two board meetings this month. Our regular monthly meeting will take place later in the month, and we will include additional charter reviews as well as a financial oversight discussion, as we mentioned last month, those being a regular part of our monthly meetings. As Chair Wright shared, we had originally expected to hold 3 charter review discussions this evening. However, after reviewing the staff's analysis, the Board of Trustees of iDream PCS made the decision to voluntarily relinquish the school's charter at the end of this school year. As the charter authorizer, our role is to set clear expectations and provide support and interventions in meeting them. We are committed to creating the conditions that allow schools to thrive, while holding them to high standards in exchange for the flexibility they are afforded. Later this evening, I will share more details about the support we are putting in place for iDream students, families, and staff. You will hear shortly that we are also issuing several truancy notices of concerns to LEAs, reflecting our ongoing commitment to ensuring students are present, engaged, and supported in their learning. Thank you, Chair Wright.
Thank you, Dr. Walker Davis. At the beginning of every board meeting, the DC Public Charter School Board hears public testimony related to items on the agenda and listens to testimony for topics not related to any agenda item. Each speaker will have 2 minutes to speak. If you need to make a few additional points, please email your testimony for us to read at public.comment@dcpcsb.org. Public officials who sign up to testify will be allowed to speak for up to 5 minutes. The hand-raising feature has been disabled. As a reminder, all written public comment is available to the public on our website. If you would like to register to provide live testimony or submit a written comment to the board, you can find all testimony registration and submission information on our website under the Public Comment tab at dcpcsb.org. Or you can call our public comment line to leave a voicemail testimony at 202-328-2660 and select option 2. As we move through each speaker, Courtney and Jonah, our Zoom hosts for the evening, will promote each speaker from the attendee pool and unmute individuals speaking. Tonight, we have 3 individuals who signed up to speak this evening. I'd like to invite to testify before the board, Kimberly Knowles. Ms. Knowles, you have 2 minutes to speak. We also have Lisa Shaw and Asia Anderson. I'm going to invite Ms. Lisa Shaw to begin while we wait. If you are in the audience, Kimberly Knowles, please just raise your hand. Hi, Lisa.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening. Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to speak in support of the charter renewal for Capitol Village Public Charter School. My name is Lisa Shaw, and I serve as the Special Projects Manager for School Talk and Restorative DC. For the past 3 years, I've worked closely with Executive Director Monica Green and the dedicated staff at Capitol Village, providing technical assistance to foster and sustain restorative practices within the school's culture and climate. Our collaborative work has included introducing staff to restorative justice principles during summer pre-service sessions, facilitating staff crew sessions focused on community building, school climate, staff wellness, and student engagement, observing and assessing the integration of community building practices within the daily crew experience, developing and leading the Our School, Our Voice Peer Mediators program, which empowers students with skills in restorative practices, conflict resolution, and accountability, and implementing data-driven assessments, family and student engagement initiatives, and interventions to address chronic absenteeism and lateness through a pilot program supported by Empower Ed. My journey with Capital Village began as the school transitioned from virtual to in-person learning after the pandemic. From the outset, it was clear that Ms. Green and her team were deeply committed to creating a welcoming, challenging, and supportive environment for all students. The staff recognized the impact of a disrupted community and intentionally worked to build a restorative space where students in small class sizes are encouraged to take accountability, show empathy, and stay engaged academically and socially. School leadership and staff are also focused on reducing in-school and out-of-school suspensions by strengthening restorative practices and identifying barriers to student connection through focus groups and coaching. On behalf of School Talk and Restorative DC, I am honored to support Capital Village Public Charter School and look forward to continuing our partnership in fostering a restorative and empowering educational environment for its students. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa, and thank you and your organization for support of our city students. And I welcome Asia Anderson.
Good evening. I'm going to try and keep this down to 2 minutes. I'm sorry, my video is acting funny.
Okay.
But I am Asia Anderson. I am the mother of Aspen Simmons, that is a student at Capital Village Public Charter School. And I'm grateful to be able to support Capital Village because they've done so much for my daughter. My daughter is a special needs student. She has ASD as well as ADHD, and she has been to about 3 or 4 schools since the diagnosis. And this is the first school that has really paid attention to her and developed not necessarily a curriculum, but how they teach her so that she's actually able to gain understanding and she's comfortable and she feels understood and she's making incredible academic progress as well as social progress. She's understanding the difference between right and wrong. She's understanding what's safe and what's not safe and how to interact properly in social interactions with peers and with adults and other people, which I really, really appreciate because for her, that was extremely difficult. The teachers have been amazing to the point where she loves to go to school every day, which is not something I could have said in the past. And I guess quantitatively, she's jumped 2 reading levels within the past year and a half, which is pretty remarkable since we've been trying to get her to do that essentially since she started reading at home and at school. She is fully supported, not just by teachers, but by the administrative staff. She feels loved, she feels comfortable, and now she's actually doing her best to grow. She's putting forth more effort than I've ever seen her put forth without me having to really, push her the way I used to have to push her. So I'm in love with the teachers. I'm in love with the staff. I'm in love with the size of the school, the fact that it's small and that everyone there is extremely attentive, and fully having a fully rounded approach coming from them, where they're trying to feed and serve and help to grow the entire student, not just academically, but socially. So I hope that you guys, renew their charter, and I'm just so grateful.
Thank you, Asia. We appreciate you taking the time to let us know the experience that you're having for your daughter, and sorry that you have had to have so many school choices. Thank you for sharing your experience with us. Did Kimberly Knowles show up, Jonah? Do we see? Okay. All right. Ms. Knowles, if you do happen to watch this, please feel free to submit your public testimony to us at public.comment@dcpcsb.org. Thank you to our speakers this evening. This concludes the public comment and public hearing portion of our agenda. Board members, may I have a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
I move to approve the April 7th, 2025 board meeting agenda.
A second.
Secretary Adamafania, can you do a roll call, please?
Yes. Chairperson Wright, Vice Chairman Sandman,
Aye.
Treasurer Stanley Beatty,
Aye.
Board Member Davis.
Aye.
Board Member Crucy voted by proxy, and she's an aye, and I am an aye as well.
Thank you. Next on our agenda, we have truancy notices of concern for multiple schools. For this item, I will yield the floor to Kirsten James, Director of Accountability, School Performance Department, to introduce the proposal. Good evening, Kirsten.
Thank you, Chair Wright. Good evening. My name is Kirsten James Floyd. I'm a director in the School Performance Department. DCPCSB staff recommends you vote to issue a notice of concern to 5 schools for surpassing the truancy threshold in DCPCSB's attendance and truancy policy. Under the attendance and truancy policy, a school may be subject to a notice of concern if it does not maintain a truancy rate at or below the truancy threshold that corresponds to its program type and grades served. DCPCSB staff reviewed attendance data from October 5th, 2024 through February 27th, 2025, and found the following. Center City Public Charter School, NOMA, had a truancy rate of 46.2. Digital Pioneers Public Charter School, Johanning, had a truancy rate of 43.9. These campuses surpassed the 30% threshold for traditional schools serving grades pre-K through 8. Girls Global Public Charter School had a 40.1% truancy rate. Sojourner Truth Public Charter School had 39.3% truancy rate. These schools exceeded the 35% threshold for traditional schools serving grades 9 through 12. Children's Guild Public Charter School had a truancy rate of 62.2%, surpassing the 45% threshold for schools eligible for the Alternative Accountability Framework. Provided you vote to issue a notice of concern to these schools, DCPCSB staff will recommend that the board lift the notice of concern for any school demonstrating attendance improvement as described in the policy. Representatives from the schools are present and prepared to answer your questions. We will ask the schools to join us in 3 groups. First, we'll promote the representatives from Center City Public Charter School and Digital Pioneers Public Charter School. After their conversation, we will promote representatives from Girls Global Public Charter School and Sojourner Truth Public Charter School to engage with the board. And lastly, we will promote representatives from Children's Guild Public Charter School to speak with you.
Thank you, Kirsten. And just to reconfirm, we are going to bring these schools up based off of grades that they serve. So first, we have our pre-K through 8th grade schools. Welcome to representatives from Center City, as well as Digital Pioneers. So I see Digital Pioneers, although both say Michelle. I know you're not both Michelle, but that's the name. Okay, I see Tracy Dow from Center City and Laura Berger from Center City. Okay. Do we, are either of you expecting anyone else or anyone else should be promoted? And
Yeah,
if you do,
I'm sorry, we've got one more person, but I think she was able to call in with a 301 area code. If you could promote her as well. Thank you.
okay.
And we have our, I think we have our three of us. 1, 2, 3. Yes.
Yeah. Ms. Holloman said that it went away.
Oh, she's right
I'm
here.
here. I'm
Okay.
here.
Okay.
Okay, so if we can first have from Center City, if you can introduce who is here with us today.
Sure. My name is Laura Berger. I manage data and assessment for Center City, and we have Tracy Dow, our principal of our NOMA campus, and Ashley Harris, one of our school counselors.
Okay, thank you. And Digital Pioneers?
Sure. Hi, this is Michelle Ashton, founder and CEO of Digital Pioneers Academy. And the other Michelle Ashton in the orange sweater is actually our principal, Ms. Shaniqua Roten. And then in the stripes is our Dean of Culture, Ms. Kaya Holloman.
Okay. So I'm not sure if I want to give each of the schools an opportunity to share with us what you see is going on, and then I'm going to invite fellow board members to ask questions so we can find out what's happening at the schools. So Center City, if you'd like to start.
I think Tracy is about to. Are you okay, Tracy?
I'm sorry, I didn't know
Oh,
who
there
was
you
starting. My apologies. At the beginning of the year, we did have an uptick in student absences starting in the fall. Then we also saw that there was increased absenteeism in the January, February months. Since then, we have launched new attendance initiatives that have seemed to kind of improve or fare well in regards to getting students into the building and also trying to make sure that we had excuse notes from students. Some of the things that we have done to kind of offset or mitigate some of the chronic absenteeism was stepping up our attendance committee, where we are sending weekly letters to families after 2 absences in a week. We are also holding parent meetings with our school counselors after 5 accumulated absences. We have partnered with the Office of Attorney General. Home visits are now starting at 7 accumulated absences versus the 10 that was set forth initially in the handbook. And we are also being proactive around CFSA referrals. There was also notably where we had families who were contributing to the truancy rate too, families with multiple children at our site, some with 4 students, and all kind of in the chronically absent lane. So since we have ramped up our attendance committee and attendance initiatives, we have seen an improvement in our attendance rate. Unfortunately, some of the data really started towards the fall and kind of beginning of the year, but we are hopeful that with these initiatives, we will continue on a positive trajectory in getting our students into the building with an increase in monthly in-seat attendance.
Thank you, Ms. Dow. I'm going to allow the Digital Pioneers team to also share your perspective of what's going on.
Great. Thank you, Chair Wright. I'm going to just share just a couple of slides. Before I start, can you all see my screen? Just want to make sure. So first, I want to thank Dr. Walker Davis and the staff. They've been incredibly supportive of us during this journey. Chair Wright, thank you for your comments at the beginning. It is tough times. It is hard work, and we feel grateful for us the opportunity to be able to do it. And to all board members, again, thank you for your support. I'll just say that we have very clear goals. We want 95% of our kids to have 90% attendance, but given the feedback and the real data as outlined, we know that we must continue to build family partnerships before absenteeism becomes chronic. That is really the more proactive approach that we must do. And we must continue to put both the supports and the accountability, very similar to as Tracy outlined. It's the supports and the accountability from early intervention, mandatory parent meetings in the summer. I just want to add a couple of things. When we looked at the pathways, you can, just to overemphasize, we can clearly see the connection with academics and attendance. When we look at the pathway D and we see our summative score on the scorecard, we see that, sure, we're meeting the minimum target score, but for us, that is absolutely not enough. We actually are incredibly appreciative of the Aspire framework because it does give us the clarity, the focus that we think is going to allow us to continue to grow going forward. With that being said, we actually pulled the data from exactly this window from last year to this year, and where we can see is an uptick, a slight uptick in attendance. Our chronic absentee has actually decreased, again, comparing to last year this time, as well as our truancy, so those are positive signs, but I just want to over communicate that this is not at all where we want to be, not acceptable, because if kids are not in school, they can't learn, which is the obvious. And so we are working really hard. This year, we consistently survey our parents. And just to give you insight, here were the 3 things that they shared with us around why their scholars are not consistently coming to school. The first, for us specifically, is that our campus does have a 46% accessibility rate. And this year, the circulator was discontinued. So we think this is actually less for our kids, which poses a greater challenge for our scholars getting to school. The second is student illness. This could be cold, COVID, flu, but it also is mental health. Those were the reasons our parents came to us. And then the last is just very specific community violence concerns, specifically in terms of safe passage. 4 of our kids have been robbed at gunpoint at different times throughout the years, and so throughout this year specifically. And so we're working to create safe passage opportunities. And we're happy to share this presentation, but our strategy, very similar to Tracy's, really just goes down to direct student and family engagement. We are trying all the strategies specific around student incentives and engagement, but then also clarifying the team coordination and accountability across our team to make sure that we can be more proactive and less reactive. And then the last slide I'll just share. We attended the best practices in terms of attendance presentation, and there were 4 specific strategies that they suggested that we are doing right now and will continue to do through the summer. And again, I mentioned this early intervention. If in the first 20 days, by really looking at prior attendance. So we know the students right now who have less than 80% attendance, that we've got to talk to those parents now throughout the summer and really get them on board. Continuing to build strong parent relationships, making sure our data analytics gives us before it becomes too late so that we can do the intervention strategies. Another one is just the incentive calendar, whether it is extracurricular or sports, or really looking at the calendar. What we realized is that the Friday before a long weekend was a really a significant dip in attendance. Our kids are taking extended weekends. And so just really making sure our calendar has the right incentives, as well as aligning with citywide calendar. That is going to help us improve our attendance to get our scholars to be in school in order to learn. And so those are just a couple of reflections. I'll stop sharing. Did I stop sharing? I think I stopped sharing. And just see Shaniqua or Kai, anything to add?
No, I think you hit it on the nail. We definitely have been doing the work to ensure that school is a space where students want to come and want to enjoy that time with their peers as well as to learn. So I think we've seen a lot of improvement over the last few weeks with trying to get our scholars into the building.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Dow. I see you have your hand raised before I turn it over to the board.
Yes, just wanted to note one thing with the initiatives that we have put in place, along with all of the student incentives, kind of like DPA. One thing that I do want to note is that during the baseline period of October 5th through February 28th, our in-seat attendance was at 84.6. Since we have ramped up our attendance initiatives and kind of revamped our attendance committee, since February 28th kind of to present, the in-seat attendance has gone up to 87.2. So there's almost, at least in that short time frame, a 3% increase. So again, we are hopeful that if we kind of keep this momentum going and really continue this throughout the rest of the year and start early in the summer and at the onset of next school year, that we should continue to see the in-seat attendance rate increase.
Okay, we'll ask a little bit about that data, because that contradicts what we're hearing. But I want to turn it over first to Treasurer Stanley Beatty and then to Vice Chairman Jim Salmon.
Thank you, Chair Wright. My question is actually for staff, and I understand that we're going to hear from other LEAs. But before that, I just want to understand. So I get that we issue the notices of concern once an LEA goes above the threshold. I get that. In terms of the actual notice, are there any requirements for LEAs that are receiving the notice?
Yes. So once an LEA receives notice, well, let me back up. Initially, they receive notice that a campus has exceeded the threshold and they have the opportunity to review and confirm the data. So there are campuses that might initially be flagged as exceeding the threshold, and maybe there are errors in their attendance data. And once those are resolved, they may no longer be truant. Once the data is confirmed and I let the school know that we intend to recommend that the board issue a notice of concern, they understand that they will be monitored for the next at least 2 months in 3 specific measures. The first is the whole school's in-seat attendance. And we look at whether or not that ISA rate is improved. Let me make sure. We also look at the ISA rate of the truant students. So all of the students that were deemed truant in the review period or the baseline period, we look at if their in-seat attendance has improved during those 2 months. And then the last one is we look at whether or not the truancy rate for the students who were not truant previously has exceeded the threshold. So the remaining students that were not truant initially, are 30% of them now truant within these 2 months, or is it less than that? And so schools have to meet 2 of those metrics in order for us to ask you to lift the notice of concern.
Okay, and that was actually my next question. Okay, so you're going to monitor them for certain metrics, and if they meet 2 of these metrics, then you recommend them to lift. If they don't lift, let's say there's no improvement, which obviously some of these LEAs are going to experience improvement, which is great. But let's say worst case scenario, there is no improvement. What is sort of the inevitable, like what happens if you continue on with the notice of concern?
So the policy right now does not go beyond the lifting of the notice of concern. So
Okay.
basically what happens is we run out of the school year, right? So come April, we won't be asking you to issue notices of concern because there are only 2 months of school left for schools to improve. And we know at that time, truancy gets pretty high for everyone because it's the end of the school year. And the percentage of students who have reached 10 absences is likely higher. So if a school goes through the end of the year and has not made progress in the remaining 3 or those 3 metrics, it's kind of up to the board in how they want to proceed. We would recommend that the notice of concern not be lifted, but in the new school year, we're starting fresh.
Yeah.
So
I understand.
there might be some additional monitoring that we'd like to do when the new year starts.
Okay, and I should probably know this, but truancy is considered in the charter review. Yes or no?
Not as an individual metric.
Okay.
It is the school climate and school environment measures that are in the review report for you to have as context are in-seat attendance and suspensions and mid-year withdrawals.
Okay, so that's how we get at it. Okay,
Right.
all right. And then I just had one other question. You mentioned that if attendance improves, then you would lift a concern. And I just had a question about how you define improvement.
At least 1 percentage point.
Okay. Thank you.
Vice Chairman.
I have one question for Kirsten and several questions for the schools. Kirsten, over what period of time do you look at truancy rates before you issue a truancy notice of concern?
So we are monitoring truancy or attendance data from the very start of the school year. What we have found is around January is when our first sets of schools are hitting those thresholds. And so this group of schools hit the threshold at the end of January. And so their baseline period is through February as well, from when they were able to review their data and be notified and issuing the notice of concern. So we usually start this process whenever a school hits the threshold, but usually it happens at the end of January, for the first time.
Thank you. My other questions are for the schools. I'm very concerned about these numbers. The truancy rate for Center City exceeds the truancy threshold, the number at which we issue a notice of truancy concern, by 50%. And its truancy rate is more than 3 times the truancy rate for other public charter schools in the same grade band and of the same program type. I think that's shocking. And the numbers aren't much better for digital pioneers. Almost 50% above the truancy threshold and almost 3 times the rate for other public charter schools at the same grade band and program type. My question, and I'll start with Center City, is how often do you do a systematic review of your attendance data to flag truancy problems? When did you begin to know there was a problem? I'm glad to see you're doing the interventions that you are doing now. When did they begin?
Oops. Apologies. I didn't know if my counselor was going to take this one. She's Ashley, are you on? Okay, sorry about that. No. So we do, at least initially in the beginning, we were doing monthly audits. We have now upped it to weekly. Like we went from monthly to bi-weekly to now, because we also noticed the uptick. We are doing weekly audits. And as I mentioned, totally revamped our attendance committee and who was a part of the committee and what roles they would take on it to make sure that we were monitoring attendance.
When did you move from monthly to weekly?
About December, January, it's like right when we really started to notice that there were several children kind of way over the peak. So following the winter break, we started upping it to weekly and really increased the home visits, started kind of doing the things. Unfortunately, for many of our students, they had already crossed the threshold, but we moved from monthly to weekly following the winter break.
And when did you begin to introduce special interventions, and what interventions did you introduce?
So we already had some interventions, we just ramped them up. So where we were doing already kind of weekly incentives around attendance, we were holding meetings, we were not doing them at the frequency that we are doing them now. So for instance, we are now sending weekly letters after 2 absences. Initially in the beginning of the year, that was 5 absences. We were not mandating the parent meetings until 7 absences. Now a student has those parent meetings mandated at 5 absences. So we basically ramped up and scaled back the window of time when we step in to do all of the things.
And Ms. Dow, I apologize. I'm here. My mute button would not take me off. I did want to add to what you stated. So we did notice the uptick in December with our middle school students. So we started doing not only just the family meetings, but also individual student meetings and setting those students on goals, because we did realize that a lot of those students were transporting their siblings and transporting their siblings, not just to our LEA, but also transporting students to other school systems. So starting with wake-up phone calls for them, and also individuals of checkpoints to make sure that they were getting to school on time, and their route to school was a secure route that they could take, where they weren't coming to school or coming into the building extremely late, and following up in that measure. Along with all of the other incentives, we have put more resources around our parents, making sure that there are things in the community that they can kind of do while their children are in school, which also keeps the parents on time, but also keeps them readily available, kind of gives some of our parents that we noticed. We had about 10 students that have been reoccurring attendance issues. So we did meet with those parents individually and try to offer them outside community support with the Office of Attorney General and with some of our other community partners, just to make sure that the parents had all that they needed to ensure that students were coming to school.
I raise these questions because the numbers suggest to me a problem that was brewing for a long time and that should have been caught earlier and addressed with comprehensive interventions sooner than they were. I would think that this should just be a routine part of school leadership, to be constantly monitoring the attendance data and trying to flag truancy problems and acting early, quickly, when you see a problem unfolding. The school year is almost over, and I'm very troubled about the number of students who seem to have fallen through the cracks this year. I have the same questions for digital pioneers. How often before now, how often were you reviewing attendance data and trying to flag truancy problems? When did you begin the process of intervention that you described to us?
Yep. We are equally concerned, as I shared earlier. There's a clear link to if you are in school, how you do academically. So we also agree with your concern. So because this was a concern for us last year, we actually did revamp our data and metrics coming into this year. So we have been looking at this daily, and really we look at it at 20-day increments. And so from the first 20 days of school, we had our scholars who are identified. They're a different group of scholars, 20 to 40 to 60, where we see the biggest jump is at that 80 days. So again, we've been tracking it, but it's that 80 days, which really comes down to the winter months. So starting after Thanksgiving, going into the holiday breaks, that's when we see a pretty significant jump in terms of the chronic truancy. We have our tier 1 interventions where we call and communicate to all of our families, and we've done very similar things that Center City has done over communicating letters. All of those interventions have been in place. Where we've tried to do additional incentives, kind of the tier 2 incentives, has come around specific contracts with families, specific contracts with students, home visits, parent meetings, mandatory parent meetings connected to academics. We have tried all those things, but I agree with your last point. It's too late by then. And this conversation has to start in the summertime, just like it needs to start right now. But I think what happens is we push, and then the summer happens, and then we start over again fresh. But my sense is that it's similar to the same kids, that we've got to start a conversation in the summertime, put the interventions in place before school starts, if we're going to see the dramatic change that we all want to see. But we 100% agree. It is too late, quite honestly, even the first 40 days of school, because once you're there, it's very, very hard to change a family's actions and behaviors. We can do all the things. I mean, we've done Ubers and parent rides and all those things, but it's too late at that point because the habits are really stuck in. And so earlier intervention, and that's what we learned from the schools that are doing well on this. Half of their strategies were around early interventions in the summer, early parent meetings, early conversations. And we're grateful for them sharing, because to me, that's where you're going to see the dramatic improvement. Oop, you're on.
That's exactly my point. Early, early, early. I have one last question, Michelle. You referred to an accessibility rate of 46%. What does that mean? How do you compute what does a 46% accessibility rate mean?
Ms. Hanson, are you able to come off and mute for that one?
Yes, I can.
Ms. Hanson is our Director of Operations. I'm sorry I didn't get to introduce her earlier. Go ahead, Sarah.
You can hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. So that rating comes from Go DC Go, the Department of Transportation. I don't know how frequently they send those out, but that is where that rating is from.
But what does accessibility mean? What is it measuring?
So I think it takes into account busing and metro, and I think those are the biggest factors. I don't know all of the pieces that play into it.
Go ahead, Kai, you want to say? You're on mute.
Yes, it accounts for all of the ways in which scholars arrive and leave from school. So it goes with the metro, private carpool, access to highways, access to different strategies to get to school. So that's what it counts to. And with our school being so far away from a metro station, whereas certain schools are privy to having a metro station directly across the street from their school and all of those things. So when we say we're 46%, we're lower than those schools who have a higher access to multiple ways to use to get to school.
Yeah, just to add, it's also bus routes, metro, walkability, city bikes, and scooters. So the accessibility of our kids to all of those transportation metrics to get to school.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Secretary Adamafania.
Thank you. Good evening, Center City and Digital Pioneers. I have two questions. One, I want to pick up on prior to Vice Chairman Salmon's question, or actually you all started answering it while he was questioning, around collaboration with government agencies to support the work that you all are doing. Would love to just hear a little bit more about what that has looked like concretely. I know I've heard mention of working with the AG's office, but what other additional supports have you all received?
Center City, you guys want to jump in?
Ashley, do you want to take this one? Can you hear me?
Can everyone hear me?
Yes. We can hear you now.
Yes. So we have partnered with a few of the local churches in our areas just to provide different supports that some of the parents may need. And also some other mental health agencies in the district. We have had a few parents this year who have had some struggles. It's not a bulk of our group, but we have had a significant amount of parents that we have needed to help them put some additional things in place for the parents so that the child is able to successfully come to school. And so those partnerships have been helpful to the students that we have. And giving, like I said, those parents supports in order for students to be able to attend and parents to have regular supports around them as well, where students are not staying at home.
Yeah, I'll add, and then I think one of our base assumptions is that our scholars will come to school when they have strong relationships, when they feel known, loved, respected, when they feel actively engaged. And transportation is a challenge because they're middle school kids, they can't drive. So, yes, we've got to remove the obstacles for transportation. And so when it comes to partnerships, we've really emphasized extracurricular partnerships. So I'll ask the middle school team to talk about the build a bike program, the flag football. Like there's a lot of things. And Ms. Roden, I know you're a specific scholar you had in mind last year. Would you just share some of those partners in terms of curricular and after school activities that have really stepped up for us?
Yeah, I think one of the things that come to mind, and I'll get into extracurricular, but I think even our partnership with DC Connect, right? Making sure that we are getting families connected with transportation where their scholars are being picked up and brought to school every day has been a really strong partnership. I think when it comes to our extracurricular, we have seen at least a handful of our scholars who may have had some challenges last year with attendance. They started the year strong, either it was on the flag football team or on bike club, where our scholars are building bikes for kids across the city. Many of these programs play a part in what continues to keep our scholars engaged and wanting to come to school. I think we also have started, and this is not outside government, but just having electives and having scholars excited about going to art class or going to music class, having a lot more programming inside of our building that really caters to what it is that our scholars want to do. But outside partnerships, we have a partnership called Power, and they come in, they're a nonprofit, and they come in and they do a lot of hands-on work with our scholars, take them on college tours and high school tours, and really just gives them the tools that they need to engage in the world. But definitely a lot of different programming that is happening inside of the building to try to get scholars to fully engage.
Do we have Best Kids as well?
Yes, so Best
Yeah.
Kids, yep. So Best Kids also.
Best
Go
Kids is
ahead,
one
Ms.
of
Holland.
our amazing initiatives that we have. It's another nonprofit. One of their big goals around the Best Kids is how attendance directly associates with financial literacy. So that's one of the things that our scholars are learning as well. And you'll see a heightened increase with scholars enrolling into that program. So those are some of the initiatives that we are doing as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, 1.5 more questions left. The half question is around the accessibility rate to digital pioneers. Just to add on extra clarity, is it measuring accessibility with relationship to where your school is located, or accessibility with relationship to modes of transportations your unique student population has access to? I'm just curious about that.
Mr. Hanson and Ms. Holman, I believe we put in the address of where our school is. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's where we put in where our school is, and there's a rating in terms of accessibility.
Okay, so the accessibility rating is associated to where the physical building is. Okay, very good. That's it. All right, my last question again for both schools is around the engagement of your board. At the end of the day, our agreement is between ourselves and the board, and so wanted to know a little bit here around how you engage the board around truancy and the strategies that you're putting in place, but not just truancy, but other school climate issues. Just wanting to know what engagement with the board looks like.
I can start. So I work with our academic committee of our board where we review, lots of different metrics on a monthly basis, including truancy. But I will say we definitely focus. I know one of the board members asked the staff, we definitely focus more on chronic absenteeism than we do truancy, because it is one of those metrics that once a student is chronically once a student is truant, they cannot become untruant, which is not the case with chronic absenteeism. So, we do report and review truancy data and chronic absenteeism data, among lots of other, behavior and academic metrics with our academic committee on a monthly basis. And then we always, with our schools that are seeing higher truancy rates, we're always looking at historical trends, month-to-month trends. We always provide context directly from the school as to what the school is doing and changes and initiatives, things like that.
I'm sorry, and really quickly there before Digital Pioneers. And what is the follow-up like from the board? And so you review the data, you notice the issue. What then does the board do in terms of accountability and follow-up for your school?
Yeah, I think that's a fair question. I think we are required to follow up specifically about whether the things we reported to them have changed at the next meeting. So, one of the things that I know Tracy mentioned earlier is we can see, PCSB was very clear around the baseline period of attendance and the review period of attendance. And so obviously, when we're getting this notice of concern, we're talking with our board to say, this is what it was. And now let's see, here are the things that NOMA is reporting to be changing about their, initiatives. And so then at the next academic committee call, which again, we meet monthly, we'll report out on whether we're seeing changes. So I would say they, and then that would lead to a different line of questioning if we don't.
Okay, thank you. Digital Pioneers.
Yeah, thank you for the question. Very similar. It is through our academic committee, and there are I think we have 8 board meetings. There are times when we go incredibly deep in academics when we have the most academic data, but every board meeting we report on our core metrics around attendance. And so we monthly report on where we are in the strategies that we're using. The conversation with the board mostly revolves around resources in terms of how does this as a priority connect with how we are spending our resources, whether it is in incentives and partnerships, as well as social emotional supports. Another specific area where this will come up is in terms of our parents as partner work. There will be specific follow-up and questions related to kind of where we are tracking, what are the initiatives, and have we seen improvement. I think Board Member Salmon hit it on the head. We are paying attention to too many lagging indicators and not enough predictive indicators. And so I think this conversation is helpful. And what I want to go back to the board and say, how do we end this year looking at our scholars, and how do we be more predictive in terms of the trends and less reactive? I think that is something that the board would appreciate, and that our team would appreciate, because I think as Laura Berger said, it's true. Once you're truant, you can't be untruant. And that's the hard part. You can only improve your NC. You can only improve your attendance for the rest of the year. And what we need to figure out is how to get you not to be truant. And I think that predictive and less lagging indicator, I know our board would appreciate, but we've been paying attention to attendance every board meeting and seeing if there's ups and downs. But I think being able to be more proactive, I think our board would appreciate.
Thank you. Again, this is more so preaching to the choir, but I am reminded that as we are, this is separate, but included, but as we're going through and reviewing schools, and we're having schools come before us and talk about what the work has been for the last 5 years, I'm just mindful that this is the beginning, right? And as I think about when your schools will come up in the next few years, I would just hate for this to be the thing that just wasn't solved for, that caused future academic problems, et cetera. And so it sounds like you have a plan. It sounds like you're moving forward. I just encourage you all to dig deeply and push forward, because you all have said it. We acknowledge it, that this is the beginning of trouble. And so I look forward to 100%. That's what we do here. Yeah, everybody smiled or looked at me. Okay, that's cool. But you work hard, and thank you for that. Chairwoman Wright.
So thank you, Center City and Digital Pioneers, for being here. I think you've heard clearly the concerns from this board regarding this. And I know we have 2 more sets of schools coming up. I know they're here and they're listening. You should anticipate that these same things are applicable to each of the groups that come before us. I will close out after we hear from the other groups to share my thoughts on this. So thank you for being here. We do expect to see improvement. You need to finish the school year strong. If your students aren't in school, they can't learn. Okay. All right. Now I would like to thank you, Jonah. You can move them off. I would now like to invite representatives from the 2 traditional schools serving grades 9 through 12, Girls Global and Sojourner Truth, to join us. And if you are from either of those schools, that's Shamira O'Neill, Karen Venable Croft, to Liam Lester, don't beat me up for your name, Justin Lessick, Ryan Abel, Denise Edwards, Taisha Powell. If you raise your hand, we can also promote. That'll help us to find you faster. I see you have a couple hands raised there, Justin. I meant Jonah, not Justin. Okay, so as schools are coming on, I think you've heard the questions that board members have, and they may have some that are specific for you, but as you introduce and then we give you an opportunity to share, I would like to hear you kind of address some of the things that you've heard board members ask so that we don't have to ask, each specific, but if you can just share that with us, and then board members will follow up with anything specific. So I see Girls Global. I see Shamira, and how do you say it? I don't want to mess it up again. Lester, Miss Lester.
Taslim.
Taslim. Okay, and should we also be expecting Karen?
I'm here. Thank you. I'm here.
Both Shamira. Okay, there you go, Karen. I see you. All right.
I see. No, I'm Karen. Sorry about that. She helped me with the link.
Okay, so I see Justin's team. I'm going to go ahead, Karen, if you can go ahead and introduce your team and your roles.
Sure. My name is Karen Venable Croft. I am the co-founder and executive director at Girls Global Academy. I have with me Dr. Shamira O'Neill, who is the principal at Girls Global Academy, and Taslim Lester, who is the director of operations for our team.
Great, thank you. And good evening, Justin. If you can go ahead and introduce the Sojourner team.
Hey, good evening, Chair Wright. So my name is Justin Lessick, founding executive director, and I guess co-founder along with the three other folks that are on the line as well this evening. So we have founding principal Denise Edwards, founding chief operating officer Ryan Abel, and founding wellness coordinator Taisha Powell.
Okay, so I know that you've sat and heard the questions that came from the board members. I think those questions are probably very similar for you as schools, recognizing that you are serving a different population. But let's start with Girls Global. Tell us what's going on, and you heard again the concerns from the board. What's going on? How have you been looking at the data? What are you doing to improve this data?
Thank you for the question. So we have also been studying our data since the beginning of the school year. Like most schools, we started in the high 90s in the beginning of the year, and our first dip occurred between October and November. Between October and November, we dipped down to 79%, which is when we really start amping up our interventions, including multiple modes of communication with families, incentives, celebrating growth for attendance. Those interventions did work. And so that saw our jump from that 79 up to 82% pretty quickly after those incentives were put in place. The second dip happened in January, and it took place around the cold weather days. We dipped down to 75% in the month of January. And digging into like the why of that, we had a virtual learning day where our attendance was only 46%. We had another day that week that was 67%, and then another day that week that was 68%. And so those days really drove down our in-seat attendance for the month of January. And ramping back up our interventions for that, we conducted 38 home visits in February. We increased our phone calls and our celebrations of growth for attendance, including making it a part of our professional development for our staff meetings. We would spend 15 to 20 minutes just calling families of students who were absent, and that had a big impact. We saw our dip go from 75% back up to almost 80%. What we do know is that the incentives work for a large number of students. Obviously, we can tier them tier 1, 2, and 3. The hardest are those tier 3 students. We have about 20 to 25 students who are chronically absent, who are chronically truant, and those students have a lot of competing priorities, including housing insecurities, watching their siblings, in addition to inconsistent support from their parents and their guardians, thinking about like, you have to get up and get yourself to school. And so there's a percentage of our students, and we're a really small school. So as that number goes up to 20, that really impacts our percentages. Those students need a lot of wraparound services, and so we've been providing connections to outside organizations, making sure that they connect with our social workers that are on site. But we are still struggling with that 20% that are chronically 20 to 30 students that are chronically absent and need some additional services. We know that the incentives work. The one that has worked the most, well, those incentives work, but the intervention that has worked the most has been the home visits. It is taxing, of course, but the 38 home visits that the team conducted in February was the most beneficial, driving that in-seat attendance up by 5%. And so we're looking to do more of those, including in recognizing that, like everyone has said, once a student is truant, you can't become untruant. So that is something that we're conscious of, that we've started talking about, moving toward the beginning of the year, which is when we have to catch it all, and noting things like our students needing those interventions in the first and second and third months of school to get that pattern of coming to school, to get the buy-in of coming to school, and to stay connected to their peers and their teachers throughout the rest of the year, because we know that as the year goes on, those numbers of absences continue to increase. Karen or Taslim, if you have anything to add.
No additions from me at this time.
I think just reiterating what our lessons learned are: early interventions, consistency of implementing our intervention strategies over time. No day is a day that we don't call and connect with a family who is struggling to get their student to school, and really looking at the mindset about attendance and having a unified approach to make sure that we are effectively changing the mindset around attendance. I think is something that I just wanted to make sure that is said in terms of the ways in which we are implementing our strategies.
Thank you, Girls Global. Sojourner Truth.
Sure. Good evening once again, Chair Wright and board members. So improving attendance, particularly with our high school students, is absolutely a top priority for us. And we very much look forward to working with the Public Charter School Board to make sure that we do improve. From the records we received, and Director James mentioned this, I believe, at the beginning, and also from our own analysis. So we know that our chronic truancy rate during that initial period for our high school students was at a 39.3%. And we know that's not acceptable. From the beginning of the year, from like a systems standpoint, Ryan, who's on the line, our chief operating officer, so he has facilitated a weekly attendance meeting that includes Taisha, who's also on the call, as well as our office manager. We have a site manager based on our partnership with communities and schools. And that team reviews changes in data typically from one week to the next. So it identifies specific and like new action points that can be taken based on which kids have crossed various thresholds, which could be like reaching a third, a fifth, an eighth, or a 10th unexcused absence. Oftentimes that meeting also, I mean, we parse out the differences between students that are chronically truant, so kids that have 10 or more unexcused absences. But another big focus of those meetings has been chronic absenteeism. And I imagine most of us know chronic absenteeism, of course, is the one that's in the Aspire framework. So that has been one that we've had our eye on as well. So for a chronically absent student being one that has reached like 10% or more absences based on whether they're excused or not. And it does get tricky, and we need to continue to keep an eye on both, because we found that we have quite a few students maybe that are chronically absent, but they do turn in notes and things. So they may have been absent for 15 days of school. They're chronically absent, but because they have certain notes or excuses, those they are not chronically truant. We have also found, looking through the data, that we have the opposite too. So we have a number of kids who are chronically truant because they've missed 10 or maybe 11 days. So they've passed that threshold of 10. But those are all the days they've missed. So with 130 days or so into the school year, they've missed 11 days, all are unexcused, so they're chronically truant, but they actually are still under the 10% for chronic absenteeism. So we really try to maintain eyes on both of those. Interventions for them typically include some of the other things that colleagues have mentioned. So things like phone calls initially, of course, letters home, but also home visits, parent meetings, making sure that there's a particular person that is doing wake up calls and stuff for kids, check-ins to say, are you on your way to school? We have grown from, over the past few years, from a very small school with sort of small school systems into more of a mid-sized middle and high school now. And so we know that some of these systems that maybe worked for us 2 years ago do in fact need revamping. And so that's been a lot of our focus, particularly this school year. The parent relationships are incredibly important. So continue to work with families, messaging, as early as, say, January. We have been talking about the risks that go with truancy, such as retention. There's a municipal regulation around missing a certain number of days, and then needing to stay back or repeat a grade. Summer school, of course, something that we're already in conversation with about parents. We've been working particularly hard with families around things like, since we received that warning notice, we are confident, in particular, two of the metrics, of the three metrics that Director James mentioned earlier, in order to show ourselves in position to hopefully be done with our letter of notice, or to get it lifted, particularly maintaining a chronic truancy rate lower than the aligned school type threshold, so 35%. Once those students that were already counted as chronically truant are excluded, so like currently our rate is at 16% when those students are not included. So we know exactly who those 13 of our high schoolers are, and we are extremely committed to making sure that that number does not continue to grow. The other one is that we are very much tracking and looking at is the improvement in-seat attendance for the majority of students who were defined as chronically truant during that baseline period. So again, we know the 57 students that were initially identified as truant. Of those 57 students, just to give you a sense, like 25 of those students have already demonstrated marked improvement in their attendance. Another 3 of those have demonstrated no change. And so, by tomorrow, as long as we remain consistent with those students, that 25, we're hopeful will turn into 28 very soon. And then we have quite a few more who, if they can string together 2 to 3 more consistent days without an absence, will also be part of that group. So we are very much committed to making sure that over 50% of those initially truant students will in fact have demonstrable or demonstrated improved attendance by the time that this current review period is closed at the end of April. Principal Edwards, Chief Operating Officer Abel, Coach Ty, anything to add? Okay, thank you again to the board for the opportunity to introduce.
Okay, Ryan, are you trying to come off mute? I see you moving, or are you saying no?
Oh no, I was trying to get off mute, but nothing much more to add. But I was just gonna additionally say, an additional thing that we're, doing, as Justin mentioned, is, and as other schools have mentioned, with the, once you go truant, that's it. We are definitely working with their families to submit, excuse documentation as well, because that would additionally help them. We try to provide them, information like your student's sick. Please let us know in writing that your student's sick so we can excuse the absence. Because a lot of families just don't give us that documentation, no matter our calls, texts, and that sort of thing.
Okay. Vice Chairman Salmon?
I have one question. It's a matter of curiosity. I'll pose it to you, Justin. It's about excused absences. If after an absence, a student brings a note from home, does the note automatically qualify as an excuse? Some note, any note? Or is there any kind of qualitative review?
That's actually a great question. There are criteria. Ryan should correct me if I'm wrong here, but I believe our policy is that for the first two or three of those, a parent writing a note that is specific about the illness will suffice. Once a few of those have occurred, then there's a higher bar. Once you've turned in three things saying my student had a sore throat and so stayed home, then there's an expectation of like a signed doctor's note. Ryan, can you confirm that?
Yeah, that is correct. I mean, our excuse policy is fully aligned with the information that OSSI has pushed out. So like if your student is absent for like one day, like, oh, I had a runny nose, upset stomach, they send us an excuse note. Hey, you're back at school the next day. Great, you're excused. But if multiple days, continue, we do require doctor's notes to mark it as, excused. Like if a student's out for 2 weeks, we don't simply accept okay, your kid was out for 2 weeks. We need some sort of, like, your child went to the doctor, was seen by a physician or something, because we want it to be like acknowledged that this is a real medical issue and not just simply a blanket statement for like a bunch of days.
Yes, thank you for that. That's very responsive to my question. I would also think that sometimes there would be notes from home that could just signal that there's something that might make a home visit appropriate, that reading them carefully to tell you what kind of story they might be communicating you with, even indirectly, would be a very useful exercise.
Yeah, and to that point, oh, you want to go, Justin?
I was just going to see if Ty had wanted to give any like personal examples kind of situations, obviously without any identifying information, but maybe any examples that might speak to that.
Yes, absolutely. We have great relationships with our families. And so if we do get a note like, hey, this kid is struggling, we actually just got one recently with a coat. This is where my team jumps in and we will work with communities and schools, our partnership there, and making sure we do a home visit, check in. We've had families that didn't have the ability to get medication while the kids were sick. And, by jumping in and doing those home visits and doing that, we've also seen those kids get back faster.
Sometimes there are issues. I know that Ty also has helped just making sure families have access to being able to wash clothes and things that might otherwise like prevent a student from feeling comfortable coming into the building.
That's what I was getting at. Thank you very much.
So I want us to be mindful of time. I think what you are hearing, and this goes for this group, and I know we have one more school here, but particularly serving our pre-K through 12th grade. One, and I'm preaching to the choir, right? We recognize that there are things that are happening across the city, and that this is an issue that we need to be thinking about across our ecosystem. I do want to note, though, as you heard from Vice Chairman Salmon, your rates are excessive and they need to improve. The reality is you all are located in communities that have schools surrounding you within the same walking distance and or serving the same population that have higher rates of attendance and lower rates of truancy. Learn from them. What are they doing? What's happening, right? As you're doing home visits, think about talking to your colleagues. What are you doing, particularly to move high schools, et cetera? We know that school and family connection is key, understanding what's going on, because we We won't be a sector that blames children. You all know, if you've heard me, you know how I feel about that in particular. We know who we serve, and so we have to adjust our programs to meet their needs, not the other way around. So even as you're looking at evaluating the partnerships and initiatives that you have, are they working for the students that you have? I don't care if you come and tell me the 12 agencies and organizations you're working with, and then you got a 40, 50% truancy rate, right? Clearly it's not working. And then I've heard twice on here now, you can't become untruant. So therefore, let's not think about things as early intervention. Let's just think about this is what we do to become a good school. And so from day one, we talk about attendance. Day one, we respond to your needs. Day one, we get there so that they don't, because you're right, they can't become untruant, but there are signals that let you know, particularly, you all know the population that you serve. You know, you get 2 days in a row, something's going on, right? You also know that the relationships that they have in school make a difference. Who's figuring out where who are the scholars we all love? That's what we used to call them, right? The scholars that we all love. We know them, we find them, 4 or 5 people checking in with them, what's happening? So you all know the practices. This data has to change. No, I know I'm preaching to the choir, but I want to make sure that you hear us say that if students are not in school, they can't learn. Your academics can improve, which means the quality of your school can improve. And when you come in front of us for a review, particularly both of you are up for a review, right? Those are things that we're asking. We're looking for your schools. We're looking for quality schools. So our expectations that you continue your work. We want to see you do it more proactive. Don't let the notice from us and the warning be what has you sitting here. Let's have you sitting here to celebrate all the great things that you're doing and your staff is doing each day to try to meet the needs of your student population. Okay? All right. Thank you for being here this evening. And we actually will see both of you soon in front of us for your review. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Chair Wright.
Thank you.
Finally, I invite representatives from our One Alternative School, Children's Guild, PCS, to join us. Frank Medley, Kendall Knox, Francesca Carter, Tana Jackson, Ashley Posey. Is there anyone here from Children's Guild? If so, please raise your hand. I see one. Thank you. We are promoting you now.
Good evening. I'm sorry. Can everyone hear me okay?
We can.
Okay, wonderful. Good evening, everyone. I am Dr. Tana Jackson, and I wanted to, if it was permissible, unfortunately, our principal, Frank Medley, sends his sincerest apologies. He had a family emergency and was unable to attend tonight. But standing in proxy for him is our former principal, Brian Daniels, who will introduce our staff if the board will approve that.
Yes, that's fine.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Brian Daniels, and as Dr. Jackson stated, I am the former principal, but still working with the organization as the Director of Community Engagement. With us this evening, we have Renisha Estep, who is the Vice President of Program Operations. We have Ashley Posey, who is the Admissions and Administrative Supervisor, and that was just Dr. Jackson, our Director of Special Education.
Okay, thank you. So, Mr. Daniels, you have clearly sat and heard us talk to the other schools. I think we'd like to just hear from you quickly about what's going on at Children's Guild and what you all are doing to address this.
Yes, thank you for that. And so I have listened to everybody, and we are all going through all of these issues, and at similar times. And but with us specifically, I would say that our attendance and our truancy issue started at probably around our October and November areas when we received our our entry into the school year, and our numbers kind of reached their plateau, and we got our in-seat attendance. We were very clear, and we could see where we were headed with our student population. Now, once the truancy and our issues began, we immediately started going into a situation where we formed attendance groups. We issued support and asked for support from our social workers, our behavior support team to reach out to parents of those identified kids that we started to see. What we are also dealing with is our huge transportation issues, and that we over 50% of our population is special education and receiving transportation through OSSI. And so when we get into the colder months and when transportation is becoming an issue with students, whether they're being picked up on time, whether they're not being picked up from school, we have parents that are having issues and calling in and trying to place them on our transportation, and we provide them access to do so in an effort to try to make sure our kids are getting to school. So we are reaching out to them with supports. We are reaching out to them with problems and solutions in efforts to try to get our kids to school in a timely fashion. But sometimes it just becomes difficult. We have gotten to a place to see our in-seat attendance rise as of January, and we're hoping to push in that same direction as we continue to work towards the end of the school year. And as we move forward, again, just like everyone has stated, what we're really just looking to do is to come up with a better plan to make sure that we are addressing the issues that we are seeing with student attendance at the beginning of the school year, and not really waiting until we have that drop off that we had in October and November. So creating a much better early intervention program to identify how we can create supports to make sure that kids are getting to school in a timely fashion will not put us in the same situation again. Just like many of the other schools, we are creating incentives and programs that are happening in school, inviting our students and our parents in on a consistent basis, which is helping to increase the communication with our families, to help us to get information and documentation around when they are missing school due to doctor's appointments, and getting them to send us written documentation to make sure that the data is put into our system and is documented as excused, as opposed to not having anything, will also help with that support. We are also in a situation where we are looking to also change our SIS. Our current SIS does not speak to the OSSI data program very well, and we're looking to make a change with that for the upcoming school year, and move to a program like Power School to make sure that it's on the same level, and we're communicating as effectively as we possibly can, and hopefully increasing a lot of or diminishing some of the data entry and feed issues that we've had over the past couple of years. Dr. Jackson, is there anything you would like to add from a special education standpoint?
Yeah, just in addition to that, what Mr. Daniels indicated is, in addition to that, we've also tried to give parents incentives. OSSI has done an initiative where parents are able to transport their students, so when they're having difficulties, to be reimbursed. And that's something that we have pushed for families who have had issues with OSSI in the past.
Thank you, Mr. Daniels and Ms. Jackson. And actually, the one question that I had, you just answered for me, Ms. Jackson, about what is your conversation with OSSI. I do know the population you serve and the dependence that many of those families have on that transportation. Please continue to stay in contact with Kirsten and her team about how we can also help to support in that advocacy and thinking about that. I do know that is a huge question for you all. I don't think we have any additional feedback that you have not heard from that was given to the other schools. That same feedback goes to you all. And Mr. Daniels, you said it from the beginning, let's think about this as early as possible and become part of just what we do in running a great school, right? Like, how do we serve our families from the beginning and think about their attendance and getting them to school from the beginning? So thank you for standing in for Mr. Medley this evening, and I don't think I see any questions from fellow board members?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So thank you to all the school representatives for being here today to answer our questions. Thank you, Kirsten, for your work to monitor our attendance and truancy policy. Colleagues, I will now, before I invite a motion, are there any board members that need to recuse themselves for the record or request that any school be pulled out for a standalone vote? All right, seeing none, I will now like to entertain a motion on the truancy notice of concern.
I move to issue notices of concern to Center City PCS NOMA, Digital Pioneers PCS Joe Henning, Girls Global PCS, Sojourner Truth PCS, and the Children's Guild DCPS for surpassing the truancy threshold in DCPCSB's attendance and truancy policy.
Is there a second?
Second.
Secretary Adam Afani, can you call roll, please?
Yes. Chairwoman Wright,
Aye.
Vice Chairman Sandman,
Aye.
Treasurer Stanley Beatty,
Aye.
Board Member Davis,
Aye.
Board Member Crucy was an aye for all schools, and I'm an aye as well.
Thank you. The motion passes. Next on our agenda are charter reviews. Our first school up for review is Capitol Village Public Charter School. I will now yield the floor to Gina Lucchese, Senior Specialist for School Quality and Evaluation, School Performance Department, to introduce the proposal and recommendation for Capitol Village PCS. While Gina is talking, I'd also like to invite in representatives from the school to be promoted as panelists. Hi, Gina.
Hi, thank you, Chair Wright. Good evening. My name is Gina Lucchese. I'm a manager in the School Performance Department. Tonight, the board will vote on the charter review and continuance of Capitol Village Public Charter School and Washington Global Public Charter School. The following charter review standard applies to each school. The School Reform Act stipulates that DCPCSB shall review a school's charter at least once every 5 years. As part of this review, DCPCSB must determine whether the school failed to meet the goals and student academic achievement expectations set forth in its charter, and whether the school committed a material violation of applicable law or of the conditions, terms, standards, or procedures set forth in its charter, including violations related to the education of children with disabilities. If DCPCSB determines that a school has not met its goals or has committed a material violation of applicable law or of its charter, the board may, at its discretion, revoke the school's charter or grant the school a conditional continuance. Additionally, there is a fiscal component to the charter review. Per the School Reform Act, the board is required to revoke a school's charter if it determines that the school has engaged in a pattern of non-adherence to generally accepted accounting principles, has engaged in a pattern of fiscal mismanagement, or is no longer economically viable. Each school under review tonight adopted the Performance Management Framework, or PMF, as its charter goals. Given the disruption in schooling and data collection during the COVID-19 pandemic and DCPCSB's development of the Aspire system, DCPCSB ceased producing the PMF after school year 2018-19 and did not assess goal attainment for school years 2019-20, 2020-21, or 21-22. Consequently, for this review period, DCPCSB staff assessed each school's charter goals performance using school year 22-23 and school year 23-24 goal attainment pathways as outlined in DCPCSB's charter goals policy. Capitol Village Public Charter School is up for its 5-year review. The school educates 89 students in grades 5 through 8 at a single campus located in Ward 5. DCPCSB assessed Capitol Village Public Charter School's charter goals performance during the review period using school year 22-23 and school year 23-24 goal attainment pathways as outlined in the charter goals policy. In school year 22-23, Capital Village Public Charter School fully met the growth pathway by demonstrating improvement in both reading and math on its nationally normed growth assessment, Northwest Evaluation Association Measures of Academic Progress, or NWEA MAP. In school year 23-24, Capital Village Public Charter School did not fully meet any pathway. The school substantially met the transitional goals pathway by improving performance from the prior school year in 3 of 4 transitional goals measures. Separate and apart from the school's goal attainment, in 2024, the Office of the State Superintendent of Education, or OSSE, identified Capital Village Public Charter School for targeted support and improvement regarding concerns related to Black students' performance. The targeted support and improvement designation indicates that a school has a student group, in this case, Black students, that scored at or below the lowest performing 5% of schools within the same grade span or accountability framework for 2 consecutive years. Approximately 85% of Capital Village Public Charter School students are Black. DCPCSB staff determined the school has not committed a material violation of the law or of its charter. DCPCSB staff also determined that the school has not engaged in a pattern of non-adherence to generally accepted accounting principles, has not engaged in a pattern of fiscal mismanagement, and is economically viable. However, Capital Village Public Charter School demonstrated weak fiscal performance during the review period, primarily due to outsized occupancy expenses. On February 21st, 2025, the school executed a lease amendment that will result in significant annual cost savings. The school has been included in DCPCSB's monitoring list since fiscal year 2023, quarter 2, and was previously included in the monitoring list in fiscal year 2021. In addition, DCPCSB placed the school on a financial corrective action plan, or FCAP, during its board meeting on October 28th, 2024. Thus far, the school has complied with the requirements of the FCAP. While the school has made positive strides in improving its financial condition, the FCAP targets are rigorous, and continued progress towards these targets throughout the duration of the FCAP is paramount to the school's economic viability. Based on these findings, DCPCSB staff recommends the board vote to continue Capital Village Public Charter Schools charter with 2 conditions. I will summarize them now, and you can read them in their entirety in the review report and accompanying proposal. First, DCPCSB will assess Capital Village Public Charter Schools' charter goals policy pathway performance over the coming years and may conduct an out-of-cycle charter review prior to the school's scheduled 10-year charter review in school year 2029-30. The second condition is that the school must implement its OSSE-required and DCPCSB-approved school improvement plan and report on its progress fulfilling the plan in its annual reports. If Capital Village Public Charter School does not demonstrate progress fulfilling its school improvement plan, DCPCSB may conduct an out-of-cycle charter review. Capital Village Public Charter School representatives are available to speak about the school's performance over the past 4 years and to answer the board's questions.
Thank you, Gina. Welcome, Capital Village Schools. Please introduce, Monica, if you wouldn't mind, please introducing yourself as well as your team. Also, do you have someone by the name of Giselle Pohl trying to get?
Yes.
Okay, we just wanted to make sure. We
Mm-hmm.
did not have. So Giselle, we will be promoting you right now. Okay, so if you could introduce your team, and then we will give you your time to present to us before the board asks questions.
Perfect. Good evening, Chairperson Wright, Executive Director Walker Davis, members of the board, and members of the community watching today. My name is Monica Green, Executive Director of Capital Village Public Charter School. Joining me is our board chair, Latoya Tolbert, our treasurer, Giselle Pohl, and Aaron Vaughn, a school designer from our partner organization, EL Education. Am I okay to start my statement?
Yes, you are. Thank you.
Awesome. Mm-hmm. So while drafting these comments, I reviewed our charter approval hearing from 5 years ago. I wanted to ensure that I remembered all the promises we made this board, our community, our sector, and our city. It's hard to believe that 5 years have gone by. We wanted to create something different for middle school education in DC. We heard what to do from 200 students, parents, and community members. Put students at the center, attend to the whole child, teach real-world skills, and create a village, a nurturing environment where students can thrive. I'm so proud to say that despite the rockiest of starts, like recruiting our founding class through virtual events because of COVID, opening in 2020 on Zoom for our first year, to navigating occupancy costs and challenges, Capitol Village is a place where students grow. And our school is a special place. I have heard many times you can feel it when you enter our doors. You see our educators teaching about ratios and author's purpose alongside perseverance and attention to detail. Every student has a mentor, and you see mentors and mentees sitting in circles discussing friendship and conflict management. Our school has always been a special place. At Capitol Village, a student with special needs came in reading 3 levels behind and left accepted into Benjamin Banneker, his #1 high school on his list. A 5th grader came to us as a general education student, struggling to write and spell her name and count to 20. She was noticed by her mentor, tested, identified as needing level 4 special education and related services. And by the end of her first year, she was writing not just her name, but multiple words and raising her hand to volunteer to answer math facts. A 7th grader enrolled while struggling with conflict resolution and ready to fight at a moment's notice. By 8th grade, she graduated as a trained peer mediator and choosing to walk away from provocation on her way home. And finally, a 5th grade student who came to us nonverbal left Capitol Village delivering the welcome address at his own graduation. So I could give you stories like this, hundreds of stories like this, and it would not do our school justice. It's crucial for our city to have small, flexible learning environments tailored to each student, where each learner can have their schedules handcrafted based on their individual needs and interests, where everyone in the building knows the plan for each learner based on goals set by the student and their family, and where there is a mentor looking out for that student. And this is important because we serve a population that is one of, if not all, one of, if not the highest of needs, where our responsibility is the most urgent. Currently, 38% of our students receive special education services. 74% of them are identified as at risk, and 19% of our students experience homelessness. So we do not take this responsibility lightly. We consistently get students year over year who are leaving traditional environments because their parents are looking for something different. And we are so honored that Capitol Village is that something different. But you don't have to don't worry about me relying on COVID or our demographics or other excuses in our talk today. We already know that opening in the pandemic was a rough start. You know what it means to serve students furthest from opportunity, and we know that there are inherent challenges in the first 5 years of starting a school. I'm proud of Capitol Village's steady growth and progress, but as I told my team just last week, we have so much more work to do. We have to grow faster and accelerate the efforts that we have in place. But I have a plan, and more importantly, I have the capable team. And where there are gaps, I have supports in place. We have help. We have always been a community-driven school backed by a local and national village committed to our mission. So when we return 5 years from now, we will not only demonstrate continued progress and growth, but also serve for the city as a model of middle school student achievement. So again, thank you for holding our team accountable to the promises we made 5 years ago. We are honored to do this work every day, and I look forward to sharing more details in your questions.
Thank you, Ms. Green. I want to go ahead and open it up to my fellow board members. Treasurer Stanley Beatty.
Hi, Ms. Green. So I have a number of financial questions that I want to talk through. Number one, I understand, and I should actually congratulate you. I know that you did quite a bit of work on amending your lease agreement. I want to start with that. So when you amended it, did you change the term?
No, ma'am, we still have the same term in our lease.
Okay, so you're running through 2035.
Yes.
Okay. Was there an amendment fee?
No.
Okay. All right. And then, I've asked this question of staff. I'm going to ask it for you for the record as well. So I understand that I'll sort of put your modifications in two buckets, right? So there was a change in your lease from January to July, and I'll ask you to actually say what that was from January to July. And then I understand from August and beyond, you actually were granted a reduction in occupancy. So you explain to me what happened from January to July.
Well, we went to the landlord and we expressed that we had metrics that we needed to uphold from the charter board, and that we needed to do it as soon as possible so that we can stay in the building throughout the rest of the year. The agreement between January and July was just a reduction of the rent that we were paying, but it didn't have the same occupancy part to it. So now, after July, we do need to move out of the space that we are reducing our square footage in the building. We have to do that over the summer. And then that is kind of how the amendment then continues after the fiscal year starts. So I think the biggest difference is just that we haven't had to do any moving in the building yet. We'll have to do that this summer.
And to reduce space. So that's the
Yes.
post August piece. The
Yes.
January to July piece, though, do you describe that as your rent? Was your rent abated? Was it deferred? What is the actual status of the reduction of rent? Was it an abatement of rent or forgiveness of rent?
It was an abatement of rent.
Okay, meaning it completely went away.
Well, the landlord and I determined that we needed to quickly do that particular reduction of rent. And the landlord and I, so we did the smaller months between January and July in one way, and then did the other one in a different way. So
And that's
yes,
what do you mean when you say you did it in one way? That's what I'm asking.
we reduced the rent right off the bat in order to move forward in the rent between now and July. The landlord and I will be figuring out how to spread that rent out in future months. We haven't done that part yet.
Okay. Okay. Thank you for that. That's what I'm trying to get to. So from January to July, then the rent is not forgiven. It's essentially, your understanding is that it's going to be amortized over a period of time.
Yeah, so we've done this before with the landlord where we've had an agreement where he's reduced our partial rent for, a particular period of time, and then we've had to add it to later months.
Okay. And your understanding, and I'm asking this, I think this is slightly different than what we thought, Will. So what she's saying is her rent from January to July, it is not forgiven. It's gonna be amortized over a later period. Is that correct? That's what you're saying, right?
So the landlord and I have talked about ways that we can bring up the extra balance from the rent that we have, but we haven't put it in a formal agreement just yet. And so that's because we wanted to make sure that we were able to get through this fiscal year and move on into the next fiscal year. So there is some additional discussion that needs to be made.
But your understanding is that it's not forgiven. That's what I'm trying to get to. Forgiven meaning that it completely goes away. Your understanding is that you are still obligated for that rent in
No.
some way.
No, well, for two of the months so I'm sorry, let me go back to the beginning. So we started the agreement in January.
Did you answer the question and I missed it? I apologize.
Oh, no, I was making sure that you were with me. Okay, so
I was distracted. Thank you for stopping.
I
we
apologize, Ms.
work.
Green.
No, it's okay. It's okay. We definitely we had 2 of the months that we just did a abatement. I'm sorry, I'm not using the right language, that we did the abatement for. And then we started the fiscal year agreement in the summertime. So there's 2 additional months, April and May, that the landlord has asked that we figure out a way to true up. So we have 2 additional months that he would like us to figure out a way to true up. I let him know that, we're not certain about how that will go. And we were only going to be able to put in the lease agreement the months that we knew that we could do and still abide by the FCAP. So what we have right now in our lease agreement does not include a deferral. It says an abatement from the beginning of January to the end of July. And then it has, like you said, the continued agreement throughout July. So I have had communication with the landlord, like off record, around like wanting to get some of that money back, but that is not a part of the lease agreement that we signed.
Okay. Okay. It's probably me, Ms. Green, that I'm not connecting it, and I may come back to it later once I get clarity.
Sure.
I think staff is trying to make sure that I'm clear as well. I'm going to move on though. So
Okay.
let me ask you a bigger question, right?
Sure.
So I understand that we're in a position where you've met the conditions to renew your charter, right? I would say that you met them barely, right? You didn't meet them overwhelmingly. You're barely meeting them, right? And there are certainly other academic challenges, as demonstrated by the citation from OSSI and some other stuff. And in terms of your ELA scores and your math scores, you're lagging the state, like you're barely meeting the minimum. So I couple that with the fact that you're on an FCAP. So you've had some financial challenges. You've done some work in terms of getting, your lease modified and restructured, but there are other issues as well. I mean, I'm looking at some of your financial indicators and you've got some challenges. I want to understand how you are approaching this. I mean, you said some really wonderful things about how the next, 10 years were going to be great. Talk to me about how you are not just going to survive, because right now you basically meet the conditions for us to continue you, and you will just survive because you're not doing great academically and you're not doing great financially. How are you going to thrive? How are you going to thrive?
That's a good question. Just talking about finances, I just want to let the board know, I don't know, I know that I've turned in like a 5-year budget to your staff. One of the highlights of that budget is that our focus is on building our cash reserves as quickly as we can. So with the executed lease amendment that we just talked about, that brings about a significant annual cost saving of $0.2 million to $0.3 million. And so that's like going from spending $50K a month to spending $26K a month in rent. And so at the end of the year, we have very strong metrics from our FCAP that we need to make sure that we are abiding by. We meet that this year, like you said, barely 30 days of cash. But next year, we double that to 61 days of cash. And then the year after that, we're projecting 98 days of cash. Now, one thing that we do know with operations with schools, you need to make sure that you have some wiggle room. That is the tough part of our budget, as you just said, it's really tight. And so our focus on lean staffing and also being very conservative with our budget, we're still able to see those gains so that in 5 years, we're at 213 days of cash at the end of that year. We're doing that by projecting out the same number of students. I believe it's 92 students, all the way through those 5 years to be conservative. Of course, we plan on, making sure that we're doing more than that, but to be conservative, we want to make sure that we're presenting a budget that is fiscally sound so that we're not backtracking. So, I think the answer to your question is we're growing quickly with our budget. We're being really, really conservative, and also making sure that the way that we're staffing, we're not top heavy, but we're making sure that we're spending and investing money in the way that we can do so to drive student achievement. I can share more thoughts about achievement if this is the appropriate time, or did that answer what you wanted to get?
Yeah, yes, thank you for that. So in terms of the budget that you spoke to, where you increased, I think you said to 61 days of cash on hand, and then you got progressively better. The question I was going to ask you, you answered it. All of that is based on the same enrollment number. That doesn't project any wild increases. Does that project any changes to your staffing? I think you said something about staffing, but you didn't say whether or not you cut staffing. So those changes with those substantial increases in cash on hand, I just want to be clear, is specifically primarily driven by your reduction in occupancy expense.
Yes, it definitely is the major driver. What we discovered is just that we are overstaffed, or excuse me, overhoused for our number of students. So, that was the thing that we needed to address. And by addressing that, it gets at the root of the issue, and therefore we're able to see those gains.
Okay. So then that helps me in terms of the financial piece. Talk to me about your academics.
Sure. Yes, I'd like to, I'm going to start this question, and then I have Aaron here that will help me at the end of that. I want to name, this is an important question for me, because I want to name that I am not satisfied with our scores academically. We are not satisfied until all of our students are proficient. I want to offer a little bit of context, though. I think it's important to also see some of the bright spots in our data as well. And then I want to talk about what we're going to do to make sure that these bright spots are for all students. So when you zoom into our data, you can see that our economically disadvantaged students and those with disabilities are outperforming their peers citywide. So in the math statewide assessment, for example, our students with disabilities met or exceeded expectations at double the percentage of students if you're just filtering for citywide. These gains are important for us because, of our higher percentages of students in these groups. So it's important that our programming for these students is strong. But even when you zoom in a little bit closer and you compare our schools apples to apples with other schools with similar populations than ours, Capital Village students almost always outperform their peers. For example, in ELA proficiency, our students are surpassing these similar schools by over 11 percentage points. In math, our students with disability achieve proficiency at more than double the average rate of similar DC middle schools. So the data shows that we have the right recipe, small school model, individual education, and this is gaining results. We just need to go harder and faster to get all students to where they need to be. So here's a couple of steps that we're taking. This year, we partnered with ANET to provide a year-long support for implementing better data-driven instruction. So we've always been a data-driven school, but we've relied mostly on map assessments and like classroom assessments 3 times a year. And so we didn't really have enough data points. So this year, we've added nationally normed DC CAPE aligned interim assessments to better monitor student progress and to respond quickly when support is needed. We've invested in consulting support in order to ensure that our teachers are not just collecting data, but they are learning how to analyze it and to drive instruction with it. So we're already seeing results with that. So for example, our math median conditional growth percentile is 12 percentage points up from last year by January of this year, just using that kind of support with our partner. And as you know, of course, the best lever for student achievement is a great teacher in the classroom. So we've needed to raise our teacher capacity. So we've revised our partnership with EL Education to make sure teachers are getting weekly coaching, side-by-side co-planning, and capacity building. So this is where I want to pass it to Aaron to share more about that work.
Thank you, Monica, and good evening, board members. I have been supporting Capital Village as its EL Education school designer, its partner and coach since before it opened its doors. And in this role, I've worked with Monica, her leadership team, and her staff to support strategic planning, monitor progress of school-wide improvement goals, and support teacher capacity to plan and deliver effective instruction that meets the needs of all students. So that last detail, that last part of my role has been where I have been focusing my support time with Capital Village this year. I've been regularly working shoulder to shoulder with teachers toward the goal of developing their understanding of Capital Village's vision for daily instruction and using student IEPs and curriculum materials to craft lessons, daily lessons that engage, challenge, and empower all students. This has had a big impact on the capacity and confidence that teachers feel in approaching instructional planning. Just to name one vignette, when I first started planning with one ELA teacher, and it's not just ELA teachers that I'm planning with, but this in particular, this educator was an ELA teacher. She felt really overwhelmed by the idea of day-to-day planning and wasn't sure where to start, especially when it came to using curriculum materials and adjusting them to meet the needs of her students, as named both in IEPs and in student data, like the interim assessments that Monica named. Over time, we worked together to unpack long-term assessments, short-term assessments, identify the essential learning required of students on each of those, and then also reviewed her students' IEP requirements, using all of those ingredients to map out daily instructional plans and help develop her planning process within a lesson plan template that Capital Village had designed. When we last met just a week or so ago, she reported that she felt much more confident and effective in her planning and instruction, with student engagement and exit tickets, both showing proof of improvement in that data. It's this type of consistent teacher capacity building that has the potential to expand Capital Village's growth gains and result in school-wide impact on student achievement year over year. Thank you.
Thanks, Erin.
Yeah, so thank you for that. So I want to do two things, Chair Wright. I just want to be clear. I think we've confirmed, and perhaps we'll follow up with staff at a later date, but I just want to be clear about the lease piece. I'm not sure that that was what we understood in terms of the structure of the lease and the amendment. And so I want to be clear in terms of following up as it relates to that and making sure that whatever the structure of the lease is, particularly that January through July piece, that we are appropriately accounting for that in the FCAP. Number one, that we understand what it is, because I'm still confused and I do this for a living and I'm still confused. So I want to make sure that we're clear about what the amendment is for that particular piece of time and how it affects the FCAP and our targets. That's number one. Number two, Chair Wright, I actually want to make a statement as it relates to my logic around this particular vote. I mean, I've said it to you, Ms. Green. Yes, you technically meet the bar for to continue your charter, but just barely. Like I said, it's not like you're meeting it overwhelmingly. And so it is vexing to me. I find myself in a position where, quite frankly, I will not go against policy. I'm going to vote to continue your charter, but I don't want to. And so because of that, I'm going to make a statement, Chair Wright, if that's okay. I want to reiterate a statement that was made by Vice Chair Salmon actually at our last meeting regarding his discomfort with partially and substantially meeting charter goals. While I understand, and I've acknowledged it tonight, that our current policy of being able to substantially meet and or partially meet goals will not be, or it will not exist, under the new Aspire performance framework. So let me say that again. I understand that our current policy of being able to substantially meet and or partially meet goals will not exist under the new Aspire performance framework. This LEA review, as well as others that have occurred before and those that are forthcoming, underscore why our current policy contradicts our desired outcomes for quality schools, high quality seats, and why that policy needs to evolve. Our policies and expectations for performance, whether academic, financial, or operational, must consistently hold a high bar. We, as the authorizer, have to set metrics that we believe are in the best interest of advancing quality schools. And when schools agree to those metrics via their charter goals, we must hold them accountable for fully meeting those goals. We should accept nothing less with regards to policies and practices that support fully meeting those goals. Thank you.
Thank you, Treasurer Stanley Beatty. So I have some questions for you for Capitol Village. So I want to understand how you all are thinking about this. Built into our system is a certain level of grace for 5-year schools. This existed way before you. We understand what it means to ramp up a new school. And this 5-year review is really meant to be a wake-up call to indicate whether or not a school, you're on track to becoming a high quality school. That's how you should look at your 5-year review. Ms. Tolbert, I'm going to come to you in a minute around the board. You should be digging into this. You should be asking questions and really using this as a roadmap to say, is what we've been doing for these last 5 years putting us on track to meet and continue our charter moving forward, or do we need to pivot? And the review should be that clear roadmap that if you don't pivot and adjust, in this case, particularly for Capitol Village, the roadmap will lead you to a less than desirable result, which will be closure, because you are barely making it. I think about if you just, for those who are listening to our hearing, I equate this for parents where your child may come home with a D. So they get a D grade and technically they've passed, right? And they may be even able to move on to the next grade, but barely. And at the end of the day, that D is not sufficient and you need to be moving those students to A's and B's in ways that they can compete and be ready to move forward. You all are operating at a D, almost the E, which would, I don't even know if schools are E, F, whichever, but you get what I mean when I say you start to fail. And so what I want you to understand that this staff's recommendation, if voted on by this board, is not an endorsement of your school's performance. It simply isn't. Well, I appreciate you highlighting bright spots, and I do hear even you had a parent, Miss Asia, earlier sharing about the successes of her student, and we've had the opportunity to visit your school and seen some of those bright spots. There are grave concerns regarding all areas of your school: academics, school climate, financing, right? And I think a lot of times when we think about schools, we forget schools are businesses too, at the end of the day, and your business is to educate children. And right now you're not educating them at the rate and pace that you did promise us 5 years ago and that we expected to see. So I want you, Ms. Tolbert, as you're leading the board, Ms. Green, as you're leading your school, to really remember this is your roadmap. And sometimes, and I will say this, Monica, as a fellow founder, sometimes we have the best laid plans and they don't necessarily play out. So this is your opportunity to adjust. Again, should this board move forward in recommending you to move forward, this is your opportunity to adjust. I do know and believe that your overhousing has caused you not to be able to move as much as you can, and appreciate the effort that you have gone through to work with your landlord. Again, I think even as a member of the Finance Committee, I have some questions about what that means long-term, and that we're not just deferring what is the inevitable in terms of being in a space that simply doesn't work. And so we'll work with you offline, because that does not, and we're asking these questions because it goes to your economic viability. The last thing I want is for your parents to be impacted and your families to be impacted because of economic reasons, right? And we can go in and talk about equitable funding and access to resources and facilities all day long, but you're there now, and so we need to make sure that it works. What I want to hear first from is Ms. Tolbert. How are you all talking about this at the board level? And what kind of conversations are you having about this roadmap that is pretty extensive? Staff takes a lot of time with these reports. They think about and review your data, but how are you using this as a roadmap to determine how you think about Capitol Village moving forward?
Good evening. So I've had the pleasure of being a part of this work since the beginning, since the inception of Capitol Village and the various iterations of our board, and now being board chair. And a couple of things I'll speak to. First is how we facilitate our board meetings. So we have monthly meetings. Every other meeting is the official board meeting. And then on that opposite month, we have our committee meetings. And so our prominent committees are our school performance, our finance, and our governance committees that meet to be able to discuss what's going going on. One of the specific things that happens at our official board meetings is the executive director highlight moment. And so that usually spans for about a good 30 minutes, sometimes even a little bit longer, depending on what information needs to be shared. But we are looking at finances. So we have very detailed presentations that are provided by Ed Ops to help us to better understand where we stand as far as our finances are concerned. It has been explained to us multiple times, the things like days of cash on hand and all of the different impacts that exist around where we are, where we need to get to. Myself and Giselle have been very participatory in the communication around FCAP. We are a part of the emails that are sent on a regular basis to Monica and Vicky at Ed Ops to provide information about where we stand and what we need to do to be able to meet the expectations of the board. And so we're very grateful for the wealth of information that is shared with us so that we then are able to ask the hard questions to Monica and those that are working with her at the school setting to be able to say, what areas of support do you all have in the building that are going on? And then what do we need to do as a board to be able to push things forward? As far as school performance is concerned, we also are looking at data on a regular basis. And so that data might look like academic data, it might look like discipline data, it might look like attendance data and things of that nature. And one of the things that we have discussed multiple times are things around what is staff support looking like. And so that's why this conversation or this work with EL education is very important to us, because that is assisting us in our staff support. And then our work around curriculum resources and ensuring that the resources that we have, the teachers are able to access those resources in the way that they need to be able to implement. And then finally, we've had a conversation, especially recently, around things like restorative approaches and how are we working with students so that those conflicts that might exist in the school setting or other things that cause some of our other data points, our discipline data points, to not be where we want them to be. How are we working to move those in the right direction? For context, I work in a school setting, and so I've been in middle school for 20 years myself, and I've also had the opportunity to write curriculum and also do professional development. So I'm very aware from a professional standpoint of what things exist and need to happen in order to help students succeed. And so when we're asking these questions, it's not from the vantage point of just trying to get basic clarity, but it's actually asking questions of, okay, so this is what you have said now, but based on research or based on the things that are important to be able to meet what the board is requesting of us and what is necessary for us to thrive, this is what we need more information on, or these are the supports that we want to put in place. It is still a work in progress, and I do appreciate your input around this 5-year check-in still being a very important conversation to help us to level set and think through what else we need to do more of, but then also giving us an opportunity to be able to do that.
I have a quick question, Ms. Tolbert. So what weaknesses or concerns is the board most focused on helping Ms. Green address?
So for this current fiscal year, most of our conversation has been around finance. And so we've spent a very good chunk of our meetings and things dealing with things around finance and trying to figure out supports. Giselle is our development finance committee lead. And so she plays a major role in what activities we're trying to do to be able to help from our end to be able to bring finances in. But then also we were in conversation consistently with Monica as she was working on this lease situation and trying to figure out, we have had moments of trying to work with brokers to be able to figure out, if do we need to move a space? How do we get out of the lease? Like just having those tough conversations around finances, most especially right now, because we knew that was a major part of our viability going forward, to make sure that if we don't have the finances in place, then we can't function on the academic side anyway. So the majority of our focus has been on finances this year, but we have not negated the school performance side. We have been, in touch with what's going on and getting information from Monica, and then having conversations just around what then do we need to do if the curriculum is being used and the data is showing what it is as far as NWEA MAP and other assessments, then what do we need to do to make sure that we can move students to the next level?
I'll echo and say that I'm good evening, everyone. I'll just echo Latoya's comments to say that we have multiple committees, so we work concurrently, not just looking into the finance, but also with school performance. And so our meetings are actually working board meetings, right? We meet not only once a month, but we meet like a week prior to work on these issues. So we are very plugged in and very aware.
I guess, not I guess, my concern is that, you know, the financial issues are definitely, you know, were very concerning. The academic concerns are just as concerning, and those take extremely well thought out, rigorous systems and structures to address, especially when we talk about, yeah, when you have a disparity in the you know, students that you serve. So I was hoping to hear something about, like, you know, how you all have been working simultaneously to address the academic concerns as you address the financials. But I'm hearing more that the financials were were the most concerning.
So they were top of mind at all of our conversations, but as Giselle mentioned, we have both committees. So I don't serve on the finance committee. I serve on the school performance committee meetings. So when we have our committee meetings, we do separate and we do have a specific lens around both of those areas every other month in our bi-monthly meetings. So every other month, we are definitely digging into the academic side, performance side, as well as the finance side. And then we come together in that board meeting that falls on the opposite month and share out reports. And then so if I'm on the school performance committee meeting, then I'll hear out the reports from finance and be able to have conversation around asking questions that I'm unsure about, those types of things. Does that answer your question?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
So I think I want to reiterate and kind of piggyback on what Board Member Davis shared. And you've heard us say this to the schools that can't, well, I don't know if you watched it, but we said this to other schools. If everything's an emergency, then nothing's an emergency. And right now, you've got some major emergencies happening. And so Ms. Tolbert and Ms. Pohl definitely expect you all as board members to ask the hard questions, to continue to push and support Monica and her team in terms of getting there, digging into the data, working with our staff continuously to increase performance and to meet the bar. Because again, I appreciate highlights of bright spots, but your data is not shining enough for your bright spots to show through. It really is gravely concerning. And then I think there is, while you are on your FCAP, and the biggest part of that FCAP was to get the occupancy together, there's a concern about your enrollment, attracting enrollment, retaining them. You have one of the highest mid-year withdrawal rates in the city, right? And so when we think about the bar that you're meeting, again, this is not an endorsement of your performance. You just happen to get by. And I know that's not what you envisioned when you founded the school. I know that is not what this board is governing and seeking as well. And so understanding, I'm going to say it again, this is 5 years. And again, there is some built-in grace that is also very difficult, not just I think for this board, but for this staff to see and to deal with, particularly at a time like this, where we are as a country, where we are as a city, and when we think about the state of our children, particularly coming out of a pandemic. So ask yourself the hard questions, be ready to make the hard decisions. But I do worry about, as you continue to have to think about your economic viability, what that does to your programming, right? Because if you can't, you got to have a certain amount of resources coming in order to pay your teachers and get the tools to pay people like Aaron, right? Like those are real expenses and real things that happen. And one of the things that I want to just remind you all and remind everyone that's listening, when it comes to the School Reform Act, there are certain areas when you have a pattern of fiscal mismanagement or there's an economic viability issue where we don't have a choice what we are required to do in terms of charter. So want to just make sure like that you're thinking about how you divide even your governing resources to provide that support to the school, and what that means moving forward. So yeah, please go ahead.
Well, first, I just want to I do want to thank the board for, your insistence on excellence. We are a school that aspires to be exactly what we promised 5 years ago. And definitely we have a long way to go. Never I've never shied away from that statement. That's something that we will, that I told my team that we need to be doing. One of the things that I failed to mention was, because I do agree that making sure that we're making the progress that we need to make is going to be a strategic plan, something that needs to happen with strong strategy, with partnerships, and with, of course, like the resources being there. So the school-wide plan that the board is asking for, we've already turned in, a draft, and we have a consultant that is helping us to execute it so that we, making sure that we are paying close attention to these benchmarks, making sure that we're making the progress that we need. And so, when I spoke about, places where we are growing, that is, it's important, but also there are places where we have gaps. So we always make sure that we're bringing in the appropriate resources to be able to meet those needs. When I talk about, the lease amendment, I want to make sure I'm clear, like it's executed. And using that lease amendment and the executed nature, what it says is that we are, you know, clear to bring down our occupancy rates, the amount of space that we take up in the building, so that all the way through the term we have the ability to bring down those costs. Now, I do understand that you were asking about like 2 months that that there's some questions around, which I'll talk more about with you with the finance team and et cetera. I mean, that's $8,000. And so we want to make sure that every penny is perfectly accounted for, yes. But even with that, we are still building up our reserves. And even through some of the uncertainties, you'll see that in our forecasting, the work that we're doing with AdOps, we have been responsive. We have been right along target all year long. We have not had issues with making sure that we're following the FCAP. So it's something that you can see in our books that we are making progress with. So it's definitely not something that we are trying to shy away from. We definitely have key areas to improve upon, but we have a plan for each area. And I think that that's important as well.
Okay. So as we get ready to go into vote, one of the things I care deeply about, and I believe that we all should, is making sure our families are fully informed about what's happening in their schools. Families are trusting us with their children, and that trust deserves transparency. It is the responsibility of school leaders, and it is our responsibility as an authorizer to make sure families are not left in the dark. Too often, especially for families who are marginalized or have less familiarity with how the education system works, that hasn't always been the case. So when schools are not fully meeting its charter goals and is being continued with conditions, families need to know that. I would love, and it would make me so happy if I knew every single family who attended a public charter school was watching this meeting. And maybe they are, but I check our YouTube numbers and that does not indicate the case. And I am looking at the participant number and that does not indicate the case. So while I wish that was the case, that is not what happens. So they deserve to hear it directly from their school. For the previous schools to whom we've issued conditions this review cycle, we required those schools to provide notice to their families pursuant to a DC PCSB provided template. While the conditions being issued here tonight differ from those schools, the right of parents to be informed about conditions for continuance does not. I will be moving to revise the staff recommendation to include all schools in this situation, and particularly tonight, Capitol Village, to provide clear, direct notice to their families. This isn't about calling out or penalizing schools. It is not meant to have an unintended consequences. It is about honoring the trust that families place in us and in you as a school leader. When a school is facing challenges, families shouldn't be the last to know. They should be partners in understanding where things stand and what comes next. I understand that some may see this kind of requirement as overreach, but let me be clear, it is not. This is part of our responsibility. We're not here to run schools, but we are here to ensure that families are informed and that they are empowered. Transparency isn't interference. It's a core part of the public trust that comes with operating a public school and how we serve our students and communities. So with that said, colleagues, unless there's further discussion, I will now make a motion. Seeing none, I move to continue Capital Village PCS charter with the conditions proposed by staff with the following amendment. A new condition is added that requires the school to inform its families of conditions 1 and condition 2 using a template provided by DC PCSB by May 5th, 2025. Is there a second?
Second.
Secretary Shakura Adamanfania, can you take roll call, please?
Yes. Chairwoman Wright,
Aye.
Vice Chairman Sandman,
Aye.
Treasurer Stanley Beatty.
I'm going to abstain from tonight's vote. While I understand this LEA has met the bar for continuance, I've learned things tonight that make me less confident about their economic viability. I'm not clear about the lease amendment, and because of that, I'm abstaining from tonight's vote.
Thank you. Board Member Davis.
I have a, Chair, I have a question. Okay.
Board Member Davis.
Aye.
Board Member Cruci with proxy voted aye. And I am an aye. Chair, that would be 3 yeses, 1 abstention. No, 4. 4 yeses. 4 yeses and 1 abstention. Thank you.
Thank you. The motion passes.
I think it was 5.
Oh,
5 yeses.
I'm sorry, Jim. Yes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, and Lee is 5. I apologize. For the record, that's 5 yeses and 1 abstention.
Thank you, Secretary Adamanfania. So you all have been continued to, you have been voted to continue. Again, Ms. Tolbert, Ms. Pohl, and Ms. Green, please use this review as your roadmap and an indication of that you're off track, but with an intention to get back to on track with what you proposed to us 5 years ago.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Have a good night. Next, Gina will introduce the proposal and recommendation for Washington Global PCS. While she is doing that, I'd like to invite representatives for the school to please raise your hand so you can be promoted to panelist, and we can engage with you once she finishes. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Wright. Washington Global Public Charter School is up for its 10-year review. The school educates 226 students in grades 6 through 8 at a single campus located in Ward 6. In addition to adopting the PMF as its goals, Washington Global Public Charter School also adopted 2 mission-specific goals, measuring students' foreign language achievement and participation in service learning projects. DCPCSB staff assessed Washington Global Public Charter School's charter goals performance using school year 22-23 and school year 23-24 goal attainment pathway performance as outlined in DCPCSB's charter goals policy and school year 22-23 and 23-24 mission-specific goal outcomes. Washington Global Public Charter School met its charter goals in school years 22-23 and 23-24. In school year 22-23 and 23-24, Washington Global Public Charter School fully met the growth pathway by exceeding publisher growth criteria in both reading and math on its nationally normed assessment, iReady. The school also met both of its mission-specific goals in school year 22-23 and school year 23-24 by exceeding the goal targets. DCPCSB staff determined the school has not committed a material violation of the law or of its charter. DCPCSB staff also determined that the school has not engaged in a pattern of non-adherence to generally accepted accounting principles, has not engaged in a pattern of fiscal mismanagement, and is economically viable. Based on these findings, DCPCSB staff recommends that the board vote to continue Washington Global Public Charter School's charter. Washington Global Public Charter School representatives are available to speak about the school's performance over the past 5 years and to answer the board's questions.
Welcome, Washington Global. Thank you for your patience. I know it's been a long evening. Who is going to speak on behalf? Is that you, Ms. Torres?
Yes, Chair Wright.
Okay, great. So good evening. If you could introduce your team, and then we'll turn it over to you to present.
Wonderful. Good evening, Chair Wright and members of the PCSB board. I am Dr. Elizabeth Torres, the CEO and co-founder of Washington Global Public Charter School. With me tonight representing Washington Global is our board chair, Dr. Teresa Kurestein, our principal, Howard Mebane, Omalara Magasuba, our director of intervention, Diana Gabriel, our director of operations, Modestine Davis, our director of curriculum, and our director of specialized instruction, Devore Brittingham.
And thank you, Dr. Torres. I apologize.
Oh, it's okay.
No, that's a hard-earned doctor, honey. Always insist upon it. I'll turn it over for you all to present as you reflect on your review.
Wonderful. The Washington Global team is honored to be here this evening for the school's 10-year review. We would first like to thank the Public Charter School Board, including the Public Charter School Board Executive Director, Dr. Michelle Walker-Davis, and PCSB staff, and also the DC Charter School Alliance for collaborating with and supporting Washington Global during this review and over the past 10 years. Over the past decade, Washington Global has provided students with a rigorous, internationally based academic program, opportunities for project-based learning, and research-based academic interventions in math and ELA. Students also authentically engage with their community and the world around them through service learning and our global studies programs, which includes Spanish and Korean language courses and a global citizenship course. We have worked tirelessly over the past 10 years to ensure that our academic program promotes student growth and achievement. As a team, we are constantly reflecting on how we can improve our program to meet the needs of all learners and to increase student engagement. Our efforts have resulted in our students making considerable academic growth in both math and ELA. In 2022, we were recognized by Empower K-12 as a bold performance school and for having the highest ELA PARCC scores of any school serving an at-risk student population of over 30%. That year, our at-risk student population was 70%. The following year, Washington Global was named a 2023 U.S. Department of Education National Blue Ribbon School for our contributions towards closing the achievement gap. Our entire school community celebrated this major achievement. Over the past 2 school years, our students have continued to make substantial progress in math and ELA. The school's median growth percentile, or MGP, was consistently above the sector average for both content areas. On the 2024 OSCE DC School Report Card, Washington Global is ranked in the top 96th percentile of all middle schools across the district. We recognize that despite our students' strong academic outcomes, that we need to continue to strive for improvement. While our ELA proficiency has consistently trended above the DC average, our math proficiency rates have been below the city average for students in grades 3 through 8. Math is still an area of focus for the school, and our efforts have resulted in students gaining 9.3 points on PARCC and DC CAPE over the past 2 years and outperforming the sector in math MGP. Our grade 7 and 8 math proficiency rates are now above the DC average for those 2 grade levels. 2 years ago, we implemented math intervention courses and math high impact tutoring. This year, through grant funding, we are able to significantly expand our high impact tutoring efforts. We are continuing to work to meet our students' needs in math. The school's leadership and board are also focused on addressing student re-enrollment. We recognize that we had a dip in re-enrollment during the 22-23 to 23-24 school year. We worked closely with our families and discovered that many students had withdrawn when they moved to other locations in DC, where Washington Global was not as accessible to them. We put several initiatives into place to support our families, including extending aftercare to 6 p.m. Our 2023-24 to 24-25 re-enrollment rate is now approximately 88.1%, and this is an area that we will continue to monitor. We are enthusiastic about what the future of Washington Global will bring. Our strategic planning focus areas include, first, continuing to increase math proficiency by bolstering support throughout the school and adding additional high-impact tutoring and conducting a curriculum review. Second, enhancing our global studies program by exploring adding an additional world language elective. And third, continuing to reduce the school's occupancy costs to support more programmatic initiatives. Again, thank you to the PCSB for working with us for a decade now and supporting our students. We are looking forward to answering any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Dr. Torres and Washington Global team. Congratulations for getting to your 10-year mark. That is no easy feat, particularly you also did so through pandemic, and you also serve in middle school grades, which are my favorite, but that's something that scares most people. So I will defer my questioning and allow Secretary Adamafania first.
Thank you, Chair Wright. Good evening, Washington Global team, and I echo the same sentiments. Congratulations on making it to your 10-year review. I just have 2 questions for you. The first one, particularly around your, out of school suspension. So throughout the review period, Washington Global Public Charter School demonstrated out of school suspension rates significantly lower than the sector rates for students in grades 6th through 8th. That's commendable. And I would love to hear what strategies you use to successfully manage student behavior.
Wonderful. I'm going to turn this one over to Omalara Magasuba, our Director of Intervention, who's been working hard at this.
Good evening. First, I'd just like to say thank you for this opportunity to discuss this. So one of the ways that we've contributed to decreasing it is our focus on the student support team. So our student support team plays a crucial role in developing targeted interventions to address student behaviors. So we've crafted individual behavior intervention plans, which provide students with structured support and strategies for positive behavioral change. And this positive approach has been instrumental in reducing our reactive disciplinary measures. So we've also paired students up with trusted adults or peer mentors who can provide guidance and support and accountability. And we also just have different groups with students that work with our counselors very closely, and our clinician that we have a partnership with Better Mornings. So we have a partnership with Better Mornings, and that has helped to significantly enhance our capacity to support students' mental health needs. So through this collaboration, we've integrated the full-time clinician into our school community, and the clinician provides Tier 1 services, which they implement the Second Step program, which fosters social emotional learning and positive classroom environments. And also the clinician has focused on Tier 2 services, which is the facilitation of those targeted group sessions addressing specific behavioral and emotional challenges. And they also address the Tier 3 services, which are individualized counseling and support for our students with critical needs. This comprehensive tiered approach to mental health support has directly contributed to a more stable and supportive school climate, ultimately reducing the need for OSS. And if anyone else wants to add on.
I think for our tier.
Yep. Oh, go ahead, Dr. Torres.
Oh, sorry. For our tier one, we have a, very strong positive behavior intervention support system. So that's across all classrooms. So students receive incentives for positive behavior. We have a lot of different programs for the students. So that's something I wanted to add, that is a universal approach. And in designing it, we used, a lot of the best practices coming out of OSSI, the Department of Education, and different, technical assistance centers to develop that. So we've tweaked it over the years to better meet student needs as well.
And the only thing I would add to that, and I think it's something that we've heard echoed throughout the evening, is that we take a very proactive approach to addressing student behavior. We are not reactive, so we take time to be intentional with staff trainings, making sure that we're providing students with opportunities and space to express themselves. We have a social worker that pulls groups and meets with students regularly to allow them, again, to voice their concerns and be proactive, find that trusted adult that Mrs. Magasuba was just speaking to. So when you put all of this together and to get that comprehensive approach, just allow students to, again, mesh much better. Again, we're a smaller school community. So with them being able to focus and have accessibility to individuals in the school makes them feel much more welcome, and it just gives them a space where they want to be and they want to perform to the best of their ability.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. And again, thank you for your work on figuring it out for our young people. And hopefully those listening tonight can borrow some of the strategies or even contact you for some of the supports that they may need. So again, good work there. My final question before I move on to my colleagues, this is actually to Oh, sorry. Okay. This is actually to members of the board. Would love to kind of hear how you all engage in academic oversight for the school. So anyone on the board can answer that.
Yes, hi. I'm Teresa Kirsten. I'm chairman of the board. So I would say the board meets 6 times a year, and we also have a annual meeting in addition to that. So we engage constantly in the academic oversight of the school. During the course of those board meetings, we receive updates on the school's performance. I would also add that we have an academic committee, which is part of the board. We have 4 committees on the board. One of them is the academic committee. We obviously also have a finance committee, an outreach committee, and a governance committee. So we receive regular updates, and in addition to that, we have a strategic plan and annual school goals. In addition to the strategic plan goals, we also have the annual school goals, and then we have updates on how we're performing against those goals. And I should say I'm very proud of how the school has done academically. I think especially receiving the Blue Ribbon Award has been one of the highest achievements of the school.
Okay, thank you. Board member, right? I mean, chairwoman, right?
Treasurer Stanley Beatty, followed by Vice Chairman Salmon.
Thank you, Chair Wright. Thank you to Washington Global, and congratulations again. Dr. Torres, thank you for mentioning the occupancy expense. I just want to ask you 2 quick questions. Thank you for bringing it up. Talk to me about your challenges there and sort of what your plan is as it relates to occupancy expense. Obviously, your ratio is higher than what we would like to see. And I read through your report. I know that you guys have done some retiring of debt, which is great, but just talk to me in general about your plan for occupancy expense.
Wonderful. So as you stated, it is higher than the sector average. We are aware. It is part of 10 years ago. We almost had to lease a commercial space. It was the only building we could find, and it was it was more expensive than any other options. There were no other options. So this is kind of a historic issue that developed, but our overall financials are very strong. We've been bringing our occupancy expenses down. We reduced them. They used to be, 72% above the sector average, which was very high. Now they're about 38% above. In 2027, our loans mature and we are looking to build up cash, which is why we have a healthy cash reserve. This year, we are projecting 254 days of cash at the end of the school year, and we hope to extinguish some of our debt with those loans that will in turn bring down our occupancy expenses and then put more money into the program itself. So we are aware it's an issue, but our debt service coverage ratio is very strong. It's almost 3. So our overall financials are very healthy, despite the occupancy expense, metrics.
Good for you. No, that's great, and thank you for being specific as it relates to the debt service coverage. That's very helpful for somebody like me. So thank you. Let me ask you just one other question. I wanted to just clarify your current debt. So I read through the report. At one point, you had 2 different loans, and then you consolidated. Just help me understand where you sit right now in terms of your leverage.
Correct. We have about 5.7 million in, I can get an exact number, but it's over 5 million in loans. The 2 different loans consolidating, there was a bridge loan. So we were financing with a bank, and there was a bridge loan, and then we got an Aussie loan with a lower interest rate. So that's why the Aussie loan then took over the bridge loan, the bank bridge loan. That's what that was in the report. I read that as well, and then I had to go back and remember what happened.
I didn't quite follow it. Yeah, so the Aussie loan retired a piece of the bank loan. Okay, and then so where you sit right now, there's just 2 bank loans, or there's the Aussie loan and the bank loan?
1 bank loan, 1 Aussie loan.
Understood. And then the bank loan, is that interest only or is that amortizing?
I believe, Teresa, do you remember if it's amortizing or is it interest only?
No, I think they're both amortizing. So one thing I'm saying is our liability to assets ratio is going down because we're paying down the principal.
Perfect. Good for you. Thank you. And congratulations again.
Vice Chairman Salmon, then Board Member Dwight Davis.
Dr. Torres, thank you for your excellent opening presentation. It was succinct, clear, and confidence-inspiring. I have no questions. I just want to offer my congratulations and my gratitude to the entire Washington Global team for a job well done.
Thank you.
Also want to express my congratulations. And I also think this is an opportunity to kind of look behind the curtain, if you will. I just wanted to ask you the same question that was asked earlier. If you can talk a little bit about particular practices that you as the executive director and the board engage in to kind of really focus in on academic performance, because you have, achieved quite a bit. And I'm sure there are other school leaders that would love to have access to the strategies or just to learn from you. Like, are there particular strategies? Are there particular practices that you find as the executive director and Mr. Mebane, as you find as the principal, that have been particularly helpful as you seek to lead to greater academic achievement?
Yes, I think when working with our board, as Dr. Kurestein mentioned, we have an academic committee, we have regular board meetings. I present iReady diagnostic data. I present how we're growing on our metrics. We take a lot of benchmark assessments. So our students take iReady 3 times a year as a diagnostic so we can pinpoint their growth. We also take NWA MAP to pinpoint growth and ANET. So we have a lot of metrics to work with. So the board gets information on all of those metrics. We also have data meetings. So more importantly, within the building, with those data metrics, we meet with our entire team. So our entire team understands where the school is data-wise. Our students, over 60%, come in reading 2 or more grade levels below. So we work really hard to make that grow so that students are successful on DC CAPE, their final assessments, And you also use the data to break students into small groups for the high impact tutoring. So we're very granular with the data. So we look at standards across subjects, and then the groups are fluid. So if a student is able to make growth, they may move to a different group, and another student goes into a different a group where they need more targeted intervention. I also wanted, to point out a few years ago, we had to kind of restructure our entire mathematics program and build in more blended learning. So it's never too late, to really revamp an area of academics that creates more student engagement and better outcomes. So we are really reflective. We all meet within the school building frequently and look at what we can do better and then pinpoint that. So this is constant, even after a blue ribbon. We never let up. We keep driving for student excellence. But I'm very proud of our team. I'm going to turn over to Mr. Mebin and whoever else from our team wants to share, because they're doing wonderful things in the school building.
Thank you for that question, and thank you, Dr. Torres. The only thing that I would add in terms of the data is not only do we have the conversation amongst our staff, but we also have the conversation with our scholars in a student-friendly way. And being able to talk to scholars about what their data looks like and showing them their own growth does far much than it can do for us having the conversations behind closed doors on PD days when students aren't a part of their own growth. So when you're able to pull a student to the side or pull a group of students to the side and go line by line and show them what they're capable of or how close they were to achieving a goal, that kind of fuels the fire or fuels that fire. And going even that further step and having the conversations with the parents also about what can you do? Because we like to call our parents our co-teachers. You're an extension of what we do, and we're an extension of what you do in the house when you send them to the school. So kind of having that community sense and making sure that the conversations go both ways. And when a scholar feels that kind of comprehensive support, that in itself fuels them to want to continue to grow and continue to learn.
Thank you.
So I also echo my board members. Kudos to you all for getting here. I do want to, and I do want to encourage you to share the strategies of what you have, because again, you happen to serve the population that I, the scholars we all love, those infamous middle schoolers. But one of the things that we did note is that your mid-year withdrawal rates for your students, and then even specifically your at-risk students, was consistently above the corresponding sector rates throughout your review period. Talk to us about that. What's going on? Because I want you sharing strategies, but not just to serve the easy students, right? Like that's not to shine. I mean, yes, they need service too, but what's going on with your at-risk students and them leaving you mid-year? What's happening there, and what are you doing to improve your student retention?
Great. So this is an area we have been focused on because it is above the sector average. So we survey all students who withdraw mid-year, and we found, and actually Diana Gabriel, our director of operations, is deeply involved in this work. We understand why a parent or student is leaving, and typically it's because they move sort of similar to our re-enrollment rate. They move elsewhere in the district, and Washington Global is not accessible to them. So it's a transportation issue, which makes sense because our mid-year withdrawal rates for students with disability is actually below the sector average because they can get an OSSI bus door to door no matter where they live. So it is something we're struggling, to come up with a solution. We have started a shuttle from Northeast this year. So we hope to look at more kind of transportation routes to see how we can support the mid-year withdrawal rates so they go down, and also our re-enrollment rates. So they kind of go hand in hand, the mid-year withdrawal and the re-enrollment. I don't know, Diana, if you want to add anything?
Yeah, and outside of what Dr. Torres has already mentioned, we are constantly reaching out to our families and talking to them and surveying them, trying to get feedback from them on what we can do to better support them. And it does go hand in hand with re-enrollment and mid-year withdrawals. But if there is a family that is withdrawing, I'm talking to the parents, whether they're coming into the school to fill out paperwork, or if, they call to let us know. Really just to pinpoint and continue fostering that relationship with the families. We did have one student who was a mid-year withdraw who, ended up coming back. And so, being able to foster those relationships with the families is huge.
That's it, Ms. Gabriel, right? Like making sure that you are staying in contact with your families and meeting their needs. We understand this is a transient city. It's getting more and more expensive to be here. And it really does impact our at-risk students, which is why I think we've got to do even more to get them so that they can stay at a school like Washington Global and continue to grow and to thrive. So my last question, where are your students going? Like, where do they go once they leave you at 8th grade? What does that transition look like, and how do you support them in high school, right? To continue, you don't want to invest all of that good work and then you just, what happens to them? Where do they go?
So they go to a number of schools around the city. We have an 8th grade high school prep course in 8th grade. So first semester of 8th grade, students take high school prep, they research schools, they go on school visits, they prepare their essays, we help them with their applications. So we always have a number of students going to Benjamin Banneker, Duke Ellington, other charter schools, just based on their interest. And a handful of students also go to some of the private Catholic schools as well. But because we are small, we don't have a high school feeder. So it's really what meets the students' needs and their interests, which is very nice. So we, collaborate with families, but that class I think is just was a game changer when we added the class in to make sure students have an understanding of high school, the process, and then got to choose somewhere they were, interested in and that would support their academic growth further.
Good. I'm glad to hear about that, because I think sometimes when you end at sort of a terminal grade, you can just kind of say, okay, good luck and keep moving. So I'm glad that you're thinking about how to prepare them. And do you do any work to kind of track your students moving forward and what it looks like even beyond high school?
That is an area that we want to expand because right now it's more anecdotal. We'll have, because we are small and we have siblings in our buildings. So we have visitors quite often. We keep in contact with parents, but kind of that formal tracking system is something that we would like to, because we have students now in college, I heard one of our students got a merit scholarship to American University. So now they're in college. We've been open so long. So I would like to have a tracking system sooner rather than later.
And I know that's not easy, but I think it also just becomes a constant reminder for you and your team of the fruit of our labor. I think that's the one thing with educators, right? You don't always get to see the fruit of your labor. You're planting all of these seeds and then they go somewhere else, and then you see the high school taking credit for what you put in that. Clearly, I'm a middle school person, right? And I'm bringing all of my stuff to the table. But no, congratulations to you all for the work that you have done and the work that you will continue to do. We look forward to seeing you again in 5 years for your actual renewal of your charter and hearing some of those bright spots of the great work that you've done with your scholars and what the alumni are doing, in this city or wherever it is that they may have ended up. So with that said, if there's no more discussion, colleagues, I will now entertain a motion.
I move to continue the charter of Washington Global Public Charter School.
Second.
Secretary Adam Efania, can you do a roll call?
Yes. Chairwoman Wright.
I wholeheartedly and excitedly, aye.
Very good. Vice Chairman Sandman.
Aye.
Treasurer Stanley Beatty.
Aye. Congratulations and thank you for being strong financial stewards.
Board Member Davis.
Aye.
Board Member Crucy was an aye, and I'm an enthusiastic aye.
The motion passes. Congratulations, Washington Global. You should be very, very proud of your hard work. Please celebrate with your staff and scholars. Congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is a vote to open a policy revision for public comment. For this item, I welcome back Kirsten James, our Director of Accountability under the School Performance Department, to introduce the proposal.
Thank you, Chair Wright. Hello again. DCPCSB staff recommends its board open the proposed revisions to the Aspire Policy and Technical Guide for public comment from April 7th, 2025 through May 18th, 2025. We are committed to ensuring the Aspire system is a reliable and transparent measure of school performance. As part of this commitment, the Aspire Policy and Technical Guide will generally be updated annually to reflect necessary refinements and clarifications that have surfaced, particularly during the academic production cycle. The revisions we are proposing cover 3 areas: minor business rules, clarifications, floors and targets, and expanding approved certifications and assessments. These revisions are driven by feedback directly from schools. Last week, DCPCSB staff previewed the Red Line Tech Guide with LEA leaders, and this week we will host office hours, giving school leaders an opportunity to ask questions and offer additional feedback. We look forward to providing more details about the proposed changes during the public hearing on May 18th.
Any questions for Ms. James about the policy and opening it up? So what I will ask, Kirsten, can you just outline briefly for the public the process for opening up the tech guide updates for public comment, including how the stakeholders will be engaged, how the feedback will be collected, and what steps will follow leading up to the board's deliberation at our public hearing?
Sure. So as I mentioned, leading up to this meeting, staff hosted a task force-like meeting with adult schools, adult serving LEAs, as they had the most kind of updates that we are proposing. And so we gathered with them to talk through several of those updates and present them to those school leaders and kind of preview them and get feedback if they had any. So now we are opening it for public comment. All of the public is welcome to submit public comment, whether in all of the ways that you have previously said are available. And as I also said, we are hosting office hours specifically for school leaders to be able to ask questions and provide feedback on the proposed updates. Once we get that information, also in any other kind of touch points that we have with schools, we also have the Aspire Connection, and school leaders know how to reach staff. They can and have and should provide their feedback if they do it via the public comment process. Once we have the public hearing in May, staff will look at all of the public comments that we've received and respond to them before the vote. And you, as the board, will be able to see staff's recommendations for what we intend to take from feedback, what we don't intend to take from feedback, what our rationale is, and you will be able to ask further questions about those kinds of things. And once all of that has been reconciled, right, we've received public comment, we've responded to it in our board documents, then you will have an opportunity to vote on whether or not you approve of the revisions.
Okay, so can you share a little bit more? This is going to be an annual process, right? So how will we ensure transparency and consistency in future updates, right? And what mechanisms are in place to continuously incorporate feedback from LEAs and other stakeholders? As board members, we hear, oh, I don't know what's going on. We're not being engaged. We get things last minute. How are you thinking about doing this on an iterative basis?
Sure. So this year specifically, we had 2 updates. One was in December, and then this one, or this school year, I should say, we had one in December that we anticipated from the first vote so that we could update floors and targets. And then we have this one that like I said, we've gotten feedback throughout the year, but specifically when we, our data team engaged in the academic production cycle where schools are submitting data and validating data, and our staff are using the tech guide to make calculations. There are specific times when the language that's in the tech guide might not be sufficient in communicating to the broader audience how something is calculated or what exclusions exist or should exist. And so those kinds of clarifications really come up the most when we're applying what's in the technical guide. And so during the academic production cycle, we have kind of a running log of things that we should clarify for a tech guide reader. With respect to other more substantial changes, we staff have developed a technical advisory group of local and national experts in the field that cover a wide variety of areas that will advise PCSB staff on ensuring that Aspire is calculating school performance equitably, making sure that there aren't any gaps in what we're trying to calculate and what we are calculating. They will provide us some critical feedback. And when the technical advisory group makes suggestions to us, we will propose those suggestions or present those suggestions to schools to as things that we may propose to the board to update about the framework. So what we'll see annually are very minor changes. And then if there are any instances where a new assessment is made available or we decide that we should measure something in a different way than we currently are, that process will be more robust. We will get guidance from the technical advisory group, but we will also engage with schools about what those updates are and a rationale for why we would change something. I also want to make clear that Aspire is in its infancy stage, and we are trying not to change as many things as possible over this period of time because it is really important for us to have a consistent set of data to look at reliability, validity, all of the things that will strengthen the system that would be compromised if we try to change everything every year. So we are really making an effort to keep changes minimal in these first several years. And then we already have scheduled that we will update floors and targets, I believe 2 years from now. And that will be the first time that we're really looking at a larger body of data that can inform us about if there are things that may need to change or not. But until then, I don't anticipate that we will have significant or we will propose significant changes, just these kind of general minor clarifications around business rules and technical language.
I want to just spend a little bit more time here because again, I think it is something that we hear in terms of feeling. I think one of the great things that happened with Aspire is that we did a lot of engagement. There were working groups. I feel like I was working every week, right, through some sort of group or some sort of meeting. And I think what ended up happening there became a expectation for that level of engagement. And so, one, I think it's going to be important for us to be crystal clear about what engagement looks like. But then I also want to push us. I appreciate hearing about the technical advisory group, and you talked about presenting to schools, thinking about a consistent way for us to do that so that there is an expectation around a cadence. I did hear our executive director shared with schools earlier. We're going to bring back quarterly LEA meetings, et cetera. But I think one of the things that there is the technical creation of Aspire, right? And then there's the practical application of Aspire. So while we might not be engaging schools to say, hey, we're thinking about changing this or we're thinking about changing that, I think there is a level of expectation that schools have from you all because of your outreach, your working groups, that there is going to be a level of engagement around even the practical application. And I don't know if you have an answer for this, and maybe this is something you all are thinking about, but what does that look like on a regular basis to engage them? Not just about changing, you know what I mean, the tech, because I agree we should not be changing on a regular, but just to engage them around the application of it, the practical implementation, excuse me, if you will, of it.
Chair Wright, I'll hop in first and then I'll turn it over to Kirsten. I think you are right that there's the technical pieces of this, and we have systems in place, and we probably have set some higher expectations of the level of engagement. But I want to double click on a couple of things. We've had a history at PCSB of having task force and working groups when we are making major changes. That's not changing. We do want to commit to being able to communicate when we are going to stand those up, make sure that we're doing them in ways that facilitate as much engagement as possible with the LEAs. And I do think adding this technical advisory group, which does combine our local experts and national experts, will be helpful because we will be coming to schools with proposals that are not just things that we as staff have thought about and vetted, but also have the backing of some of our other experts. But that's the technical side. I do think that there is an adaptive side to this as well as people start to engage and learn more and use the Aspire framework. It will be new for us as a sector, and so we want to have conversations that don't feel as high stakes when you are looking at your data and thinking about how this impacts your particular review, but we're having larger conversations across the ecosystem about what does it mean to be in a new state of accountability? How is this playing out as schools are trying to communicate the meaning of new measures or new calculations of measures with their school community? And I think those will be less formal settings. They will be in places like our quarterly, not quarterly, I want to make sure our charter leaders meeting, we have not determined that the cadence will be quarterly, but our charter leaders meeting, but also in partnership with the Alliance and in partnership with the new support center as we're creating smaller environments just to have questions about how is this working for you? Now, I would imagine in some of those conversations, some technical issues may come up, but I do think we are thinking about how to create spaces and not just with the data managers and EDs, but parents are also a critical part of how is this playing out in your school? How are you understanding how our new system is working? And boards, members of boards are another critical target audience that we want to engage because board members are looking at the outcomes that will come from this system and determining where to allocate or reallocate resources in their schools. So I think there's two parts of it. And over the next year, as we're rolling out and engaging folks in the system, we'll articulate more clearly where and how people can engage with our new system.
I'll just add that we are approaching public reporting. And so there will be more visibility into the actual system and the measures and what they mean. And so that is definitely on our roadmap of priorities to make sure that we have input, but also that we, as Dr. Walker Davis said, create space for feedback from our prioritized audiences like families and LEA boards. The other thing that I wanted to mention is the charter goals policy, which is kind of the sister policy that talks about the standards for review and individually negotiated goals and how to adopt Aspire as your charter goals and academic achievement expectations is going to be updated in the next 2 years. And so that will also go through some heavy engagement to talk about what the future of standard for review looks like when a school adopts Aspire as its goals, what it looks like for schools, the new standards of rigor that have been articulated in the charter goals policy. So all of those things are also opportunities for schools to engage. The last thing I'll say is we have been really strategic about all of the touch points that we have with schools. And so we have the Aspire Connection newsletter, which goes out bi-weekly, but we also leverage Dr. Walker Davis's quarterly messages. We leverage meetings that schools are having with staff for other reasons to talk about Aspire type things or get feedback or anything like that. So we are trying to make sure that there is a clear line that connects all of our work. And so any opportunity we have where we're connecting with schools, we are making or providing opportunities and space for getting input.
Thank you. I would just like to challenge us to, particularly as we transition our sector to a new performance accountability framework, as we make very difficult decisions as an authorizing body around the quality of our schools and what's happening, that we think about the potential in the same way we think about our board of creating an engagement calendar and highlighting those things. Because I think when we're silent to our engagement, the gap is filled with we are not engaging. And so I think if we want to tell that story, I think we should put, even if it's not always, and I didn't mean to put you on quarterly, that's my old school leader hat coming in because that's what it used to be. But like, I think whatever that new, I know we have other audiences now in other ways, whatever those ways are, making sure that we document that. And maybe that's something we can consider rolling out at the start of the school year so that people know what our intent is around engagement. And it might not always look like PCSB convening, but it may be PCSB pushing in, using resources, et cetera. Because I think right now the thought is, oh, we're not, and you did all of this September, October, or whenever it last was, and now we haven't heard from you when we know, that may not be the reality. Okay. So now with that, colleagues, I will now entertain a motion.
I move to open for public comment, revisions to the Aspire policy and technical guide.
Second. Second.
Secretary Adam Afanian, can you do a roll call, please?
Yes. Chairwoman Wright.
Aye.
Vice Chairman Sandman.
Aye.
Treasurer Stanley Beatty.
Aye.
Board Member Dwight Davis.
Aye.
Board Member Cruzy through proxy voted aye, and I'm an aye as well.
Thank you. So the public comment is open, and I do highly encourage folks to provide us with feedback. I know it can be a lot of information, but please take the time and make sure we get that feedback. We do look at it, consider it, and want to hear from you. So next is an item to be read into record. For this, I yield the floor to Melody. I do know your name. Melody Sampson, Chief School Performance Officer of our School Performance Department. Welcome, Melody.
Thank you, Chair Wright. Good evening. My name is Melody Sampson, DCPCSB's Chief School Performance Officer. DCPCSB staff request to submit into the record the official charter relinquishment notification from iDream Public Charter School. On March 21, 2025, iDream Public Charter School's Board of Trustees voted to relinquish its charter effective June 18, 2025. For context, this spring, DCPCSB staff conducted a 5-year charter review of iDream Public Charter School as required by the School Reform Act. DCPCSB staff found iDream Public Charter School substantially met its charter goals in school year 22-23 and partially met its charter goals in school year 23-24. DCPCSB staff found that the school did not materially violate the law or its charter, and also found that the school did not display a pattern of fiscal mismanagement and is economically viable. To elaborate, iDream Public Charter School's goal attainment declined from school year 22-23 to school year 23-24. In school year 22-23, iDream Public Charter School substantially met its goals by demonstrating improvement in 4 of 5 transitional goal measures. The school did not meet or exceed performance in any measure that school year. In school year 23-24, iDream Public Charter School partially met its goals by exceeding publisher growth criteria in one of two subjects, reading, on its nationally normed growth assessment. Additionally, the school demonstrated concerningly low outcomes in English language arts proficiency, and math growth. School year 23-24 was the first school year in which 10 or more iDream Public Charter School students took the state assessment, DC CAPE. That year, iDream Public Charter Schools ELA and math proficiency rates were both less than 5%, significantly lagging state rates of 31.4% and 25% respectively. Of particular concern is the high rate of students earning only level 1 or level 2 on DC CAPE, indicating that most iDream Public Charter School students neither met nor approached proficiency. In school year 23-24, more than 80% of students earned level 1 or level 2 on DC CAPE and ELA, and more than 95% of students earned level 1 or 2 on the assessment in math. Based on these findings, DC PCSB staff prepared a preliminary review report on the school, recommending the board continue the school with conditions. Following DC PCSB's customary practice, DC PCSB staff discussed its findings and conditions recommendations with iDream Public Charter School on March 17th, 2025. That same day, staff shared the draft preliminary review report with the school. The school's Board of Trustees then decided to relinquish its charter, choosing to close at the end of school year 24-25.
Chair Wright, as you know, the board does not need to take any action on this. This is officially reading it into the record, but I did want to just round out our comments regarding this relinquishment. PCSB recognizes that the decision to relinquish a charter has significant and personal impacts on students, families, and staff. We know iDream leadership and board did not take this action lightly, and neither do we at DCPCSB. In response, we are actively working to ensure that every member of the iDream PCS community is supported through this transition. The school has already taken important steps to communicate directly with families and staff, including hosting community meetings to hear concerns and provide updates. DCPCSB is partnering closely with iDream PCS to ensure that students have access to quality school options for the 2025-26 academic year. Our family engagement coordinators will reach out to every family to support them through the enrollment process and ensure that they have information that they need to make the best decisions for their children's education. For school staff, we're sharing information about the 3 upcoming hiring fairs designed to connect educators and school professionals with new career opportunities across the city. Information about these events has already been shared with iDream staff and will also be promoted via our social media channels. In the weeks ahead, DCPCSB will continue to collaborate with My School DC, OSSI, DCPS, and other partner agencies to provide a smooth and well-supported transition for all involved. Thank you to the iDream Executive Director, the Board of Trustees, and the community for your commitment to students, and know that we are here to support you in every step ahead.
Thank you, Dr. Walker-Davis. I just want to reiterate on behalf of the board what Dr. Walker-Davis said. We recognize that to relinquish a charter is never an easy decision, and it does have impact on school communities. So we are here to support and have been supportive of iDream. And I also know that there are other LEAs out there who have also stepped in and are working to support the school community as well. So thank you to those LEAs, and thank you to staff in advance for the work that you're doing. And again, regards to the iDream leadership team, school team, as well as the Board of Trustees. With that, is there any new business? All right, seeing none, colleagues, I will now entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn the April 7th, 2025 board meeting.
I second.
All right, Secretary Adama Fania, please do a roll call.
Chairwoman Wright,
Aye.
Vice Chairman Sandman,
Aye.
Treasurer Stanley Beatty,
Aye.
Board Member Davis,
Aye.
Board Member Crucy via proxy voted aye, and I'm an aye as well.
Thank you. Motion passes. Thank you, everyone, for joining us this evening. Have a good night and be safe.